Hello, GLOBEBUSTERS. Yes, of course they're serious. You do? You have? No kidding. Uh-huh. Oh, they'll cure your globitis this week. Thank you. We got one!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the GLOBEBUSTERS.
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators.
And now, here's your host.
And welcome everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS, Flat Earth, a primer on plasma. I am your host, Bob Xanadude60, and sorry about that last intro, guys. I don't know what happened. That was so weird. I was not streaming on OBS, and yet, for whatever reason, while we were offline, before I even started the stream, it just started playing it all. Completely bizarre. Don't know what happened, but, well, hopefully we're back on and everybody is back with us. So, anyway, let me go ahead and introduce my two co-hosts, and we'll get this show on the road. First up, we have Jaron from Jaronism. How you doing today, Jaron?
Doing great, Bob. Yourself?
Oh, doing better now that we got the craziness with the stream going better. That was weird.
Got to take a curveball every now and again, you know?
I guess so. You just never know when this is going to do. And all morning long, it's been telling me bad stream, and I've had to refresh and stuff like that. So people out in the chat, you know, let us know if we're cutting in and out on the stream or anything like that is wrong with it, because right now I'm still showing bad stream. And that's crazy because I have a 300 megabit line, but I don't know what's going on. But weirdness ensues. So
sounds like I'm running the show, really.
Right, it's about time I had a bad day on it, right? So, and also with us today we have John the Morgul. How you doing today, John? I can't talk today.
I'm doing all right, man. Doing real well. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks everyone for joining. And yeah, good day, man.
All right, beautiful. So, and Iru, we just talked to Iru right before the show started. He is either at the airport or on his way to the airport, getting ready to get on a plane and head for the UK, so he can be a speaker there at the conference. That conference actually takes place in 5 days, and of course Hero is one of the speakers there. So he won't be with us today, but he's probably listening to us as we speak, and will be for as long as he can on the plane anyway, until he gets out of satellite range, right? So anyway, okay. Well, now that we've got that out of the way, so it's been a very interesting week. Lots of interesting things have happened, and geez, I'm not sure exactly where to start, but I will say that the reason that I'm kind of doing a little primer on plasma today, and I'm not going to go too deeply in it, but there is a video that came out this week. Actually, it's an entire series of videos, and we'll get into this here in a little bit. But there's some interesting things that is being said in it, and part of it I completely disagree with, and then part of it I totally agree with. And we'll be, we'll be kind of hammering that out after we talk with the creator on that this week. But I figured until then, probably one of the best things we could do is just talk a little bit about plasma and how it all works. And then, once we get through that, I think we'll probably do something that we haven't done in quite a while also, and that is maybe take some of your calls a little bit later on in the show. So any of you that have any questions for us, anything like that, we will be getting to that a little bit later on. So anyway, John, I guess you are now on your phone internet. Is that correct? Because you're having some problems with your main internet. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm using my phone, but it seems like everything's working okay. I could not hear the show introduction, so I may have some playback issues on whatever you play. But yeah, other than that, it seems like it's doing okay on my end, and hopefully y'all will let me know out there if there's any issues on your end.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good. Well, you're sounding all right, and Jaron sounds all right, and but I'm still showing a bad stream, so I don't know what's going on with OBS. Of course, it's also suspicious that OBS did a little update, so I'm not sure what's going on with that, but whatever. All right. So, and Jaron, what? I understand you were working on a video yesterday. You thought the show was yesterday, and you are doing a video response to Aron Ra. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I was almost done, but that was a classic foul up yesterday as I sat here waiting for you to call me at noon and then realized that it was Saturday. But yeah, I have a video, should be out probably later today. But yeah, just a nice little response to Aron Ra. And thank you to everyone. I got a Skype message from the head of that channel, the Non Sequitur show. And he says, "Oh, it must feel really good to have so many people who follow you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Oh, well, have you seen the comments that a lot of people are coming to your defense?" And I said, "Well, no, I wouldn't dare venture over to those comments because I just don't need to see a bunch of nonsense that where 95% of it about me is not true." So, but I do thank everyone for whatever you're doing over there. For him to have to message me and say, that it must feel great to have so many followers. I said, "Well, don't worry about that." I said, "It feels good to know that people at least are questioning things, and that's something that didn't seem to be allowed so much a few years back. And so it's nice to know that now more people are questioning things and not just taking everything simply because an authority says so, even though many of those science believers still do that." So thank you guys to those who are in the comments and battling. Unfortunately, I'm not there much anymore because it gets too painful. But it's good to know that there's people there that are still battling. And so I just want to say thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that show was pretty brutal, man. I listened to it the other night. I figured I'd put on something while I was laying down going to sleep. And my blood was like boiling for about an hour and a half of it. I had to cut it off.
Yeah, that's what most people say. I certainly don't envy anybody that had to listen to it. I can't even listen to it back. Usually if I do some sort of a debate or some sort of interview, I can listen to myself back. I've never liked that, but I can usually handle it. But in this case, I wouldn't even dare try and listen to that back. It would make me sick.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. And then of course they had a celebratory party afterwards with all the Reds Reddit crew, and it was ridiculous. But that just shows their mentality. The guy wouldn't listen. He uses that same tactic on everybody, and it was really kind of a pathetic tactic. But I think ultimately, you came out of it looking good. I mean, like I said, if it were me, I would have been a lot more aggressive. But that's a little difference, I guess, between you and I. Is I will get pissed and lash back at these guys, and you just totally kept your composure. And that really says volumes about you, Jaron. And it was really pretty admirable that you did it that way. So I think everybody was pretty proud of your performance, regardless of them trying to overrun you.
Well, I mean, I think that you learn from every experience, and that's just a learning experience for me. And what we're going to be going up at some point with some of these guys that are going to try and play these kind of tactics. And clearly, I mean, if you go back and listen to this, I just remember from memory, but there wasn't one time where one of the moderators said, "Let Jaron finish." It just was completely, it was on their turf, and they took it the way they wanted it to go. And yeah, I always think that it's better to, kind of, rather than get upset and get all pissed and kind of show them that they've frustrated you, is just to go with the punches. And, that guy wasn't going to listen to anything. I mean, that was clear right from the start. And if you already think you know everything, then there's nothing to know. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing to discuss. Why would you even waste your time in hearing somebody else's opinion if you already know the truth? To me, I'm the opposite, that I want to know the truth. And so I like listening to other people's opinions because it helps me kind of formulate mine. And there's no way anything that he said swayed my beliefs at all. There was no compelling evidence. There was no compelling proof. There was nothing that would make me doubt my current beliefs. It, in fact, just more solidified why I believe what I believe, and why I think that people who believe what he does are just, he talks about, I do my own independent research. I do my own independent experiments. And there's no way. I mean, there's no way all the things that he's saying that he knows, that he's tested these things in his lab at his house. I mean, there's no possible way. You simply have decided to call those things evidence, but you're just basing on the fact that other people have done that research, and other people have done those experiments, and you're just banking on the fact that they must be telling the truth, that there's no way they could have lied to you, that there's no way that some of this stuff could be passed. It's that whole thing of you're too smart to be fooled, and that's what they feel like, and they're in for a rude awakening eventually.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the other part of it.
The only thing that the Globe has going for it, it takes me a second to unmute, so forgive me. The only thing that Globe Earth has going for it is people already believe it. And when you have people who think that they know everything, they refuse to look at other things, and then claim that they've done all this experimentation themselves, well, we know that that's not true, because if you actually do the experiments, you come back with results of a planar Earth. And it seemed like the main thing that was his proof for curvature was like ships going over the horizon. And, we've heard that since, the beginning of this. And, it's clear to me that we're not seeing the ships go over a curve, but it's the light that's refracting or curving down as the ship gains distance. You also have perspective. But that's such a very flimsy argument for the Globe, just like all the other arguments are. And again, the only thing that the Globe has going for it is that people already believe it. You have the sort of peer pressure or the stigma around flat Earth. And it's sad, but, I've come to the conclusion a long time ago that there's a lot of people who are simply never going to be convinced to even look at this skeptically and objectively. And at some point, it's almost like we have to pick our battles, because, I don't have that sort of patience to deal with the arrogance of people like that. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous that these things that may be called evidence of the Globe are certainly not proof of the Globe, whereas that's what they miss the difference between evidence of and proof. And of course, everything that we've been taught and everything that we've been trained to believe and everything that we've been shown is meant to make you feel like those things are all proofs. And they just simply aren't. And when you've seen, you've gone out and looked at the beach and you've watched boats with an actual skeptical eye and said, okay, are these boats actually going over the curve? If you've done that, then you've come and walked away from that saying, no, clearly they are not going over. There is no curve that they're going over. They clearly are disappearing from the bottom up, just as a human would be if they walked away from you. Just like we see in that Phuket Word video where the guy on the bike is riding off on the bridge and disappears from the bottom up. It's the same exact thing that we see at the beach. So at that point, you need to be able to walk away from that and say, okay, well, there's got to be some other things that are proof of the Globe, because this isn't one. So when I sit across from somebody like Aaron Ra, who wants to beat that drum, that he's seen it, it's his experience, he's seen the boats go over the curve, it absolutely is fact, it's objective evidence, that's fine. But at that point, that person isn't looking for the truth. They already know the truth. And that's the difference. And I think this is what's hard for people to understand, is that we already believed what they believe. It's as if they think that we grew up flat earthers and their job is to show us the evidence that it's a globe. And they don't understand. We already believed all that. We already know all the evidence of the globe. And when we went out and skeptically tried to put that to experience, that's when we came away as flat earthers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And, something that you had brought up a while back, Jaron, I think it's a good point. I don't know how long ago, probably a couple of years, but if you watch a boat that goes straight away from you out to the sea and then you watch it disappear, say that goes 10 miles and it totally disappears. Well, if you had someone that's standing, say 90 degrees to your right, 5 miles away, that watches the boat from the side view, so they're not watching it go away from them, but they're watching it go from left to right, you would expect them to see the boat go over a hump. But in reality, you never see that. The boat goes across a plain. Absolutely. And so that really does fairly well debunk that so-called evidence of a globe Earth, because we never see boats go over, down a curve from a side view. So it really is very flimsy, just like everything else. But the idea of a flat Earth is just so bizarre and preposterous to the mainstream that it's almost like they don't have to look at it, or so they think. They just think it's ridiculous. They never have to look into it, and that's going to be their permission no matter what. And it is a shame, but again, some people you're just never going to convince to even look at this, no matter what evidence is presented, and that is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's a video I talked about doing that I never did, but I was going to name it, I can live on a globe and you can live on a globe, but we cannot live on a globe. Because when you add that third person's perspective, you're right, then the whole thing falls apart. And if you really look at it, everything about the globe is measured from that one person. The boat's going away from me and it's falling over the edge. And I'm a surveyor and I'm measuring the drop in the earth away from me. But when you start adding other perspectives, and saying, okay, well, you're measuring a drop to you, but this person's measuring a drop back to you. And then you get that third person's perspective who also needs to be measuring a drop. Everything starts falling apart. Now you've got, all these people, and then that gets into the whole metaphysical idea of everyone's at the top of the ball. That's what you have to say. And then from there, I mean, just to picture this, that if we got a ton of levels, and glued them end to end, perfectly end to end, and started to build this row of levels that according to the globe, it would stay perfectly matched. The levels would be side to side perfectly, what would you call that, perpendicular. And the levels would go off into the distance, but they would actually wrap around the globe. That's what they believe. So you have to really give up some of your senses and all of them, basically. The ideas that to be true. I mean, just like we know that you level a house before you build it. Well, if you leveled your house and then you leveled the house right next to you and you went down the street and that street continued all the way around the world, that according to them, all those houses would be perfectly level, but it would circle around in a globe shape. So, I mean,
right. But if you had the levels that were perpendicular to one another, you couldn't have both. They couldn't be perpendicular or perfectly aligned and stay in level, hundreds of levels out.
But that's what they believe. That's what they think, right? Because they think that water is flat everywhere on the globe. It's level everywhere, but it wraps around, I guess, somehow. Yeah, it's exactly what you said, John. I mean, that's what they have to believe to think that, even though we know that it just couldn't possibly happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oops, I got all screwed up here. All right. Oh, the other thing I was going to say also is, not only are we taught, incorrect concepts, like the boat going over the curve, but it seems like we were never taught anything about perspective. The only time you really get any lessons on perspective and how it actually works is if you are, in some sort of art class or maybe even taking an advanced art degree, where obviously, if you don't understand perspective, you certainly aren't going to be a very good artist. But even then, they don't go into, or at least I would speculate, and I don't know this for sure, but I would speculate that they don't go deeply into, light refraction and exact conditions that create it, thus giving, some people the idea that there is such a thing as standard refraction, which of course there is not. And, these are things that they just don't teach us, especially in general curriculum, and it takes a while. You have to take either college level courses or advanced, type of courses to even touch on some of these subjects that nobody is ever exposed to. And I think obviously there's a reason for that, because they don't want people thinking along those lines. Even when you are deep into electrical engineering classes, they don't really cover plasma that much. Plasma is this, thing that is kind of, over the last, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years has been sort of fringe. And that's why the Thunderbolts project, has been kind of, gradually making grounds. But I mean, when they first came out with their movie, I mean, they were heavily ridiculed. People saying that, well, plasma physics is absolutely nonsense. Christian Birkeland didn't know what he was talking about. And it's all been superseded by, the mainstream, Einsteinian and Newtonian physics. But, again, they don't teach us about phenomenon like plasma, other than to say maybe something like, well, it's the fourth state of matter. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? They don't really get into too much elaboration on that. Or, exactly how it applies to our everyday world that is around us. And that's why, one of the reasons I love playing the Dan Dimension, this particular video, the Let There Be Light video, is because this is something that deals directly with plasma, and also how gases react when they are around a charged electrostatic and electromagnetic environment. This is something that most people have no clue about, and this is really an important piece of information that people need to understand, at least on a cursory level, because in my opinion, and I think in several other people's opinion, that this plasma universe, this electric universe, is what it's all about. And of course, they don't ever want to touch anything that would ever deal with the actual truth, right? That's just verboten. So anyway, so we will get into that in just a little bit. But one thing I do want to cover beforehand, let's stop old Dan Dimension here. He has a new video, by the way, which is outstanding and fits perfectly into today's lesson, which I thought was quite fortuitous timing. I swear I think that guy reads my mind sometimes. It's awesome. But what I do want to talk about is, are you guys familiar with this guy, this channel? It's called UAP. And it stands for Underrated Actual Physicist. Have either one of you seen this channel before?
No.
I just saw his recent video that was really good.
The one that I mirrored on GLOBEBUSTErs?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really, really good. And this guy he's amazing. I love his stuff. I just came across his stuff last week. I've been watching his videos like mad. And he absolutely rips up the SpaceX feeds. And in fact, if you guys haven't seen this particular video, I did mirror it on our page. It's under a little bit different name than this, but he names it "Caught Faking Space: Early Celebration When SpaceX Thinks They Got Away with It on December 22nd, 2017." And of course, what it's about is, many of you may remember that on the 22nd there was this Arizona, I think it was an Arizona helicopter, right, that was taking footage of this thing. And they're going, "What is this thing? We don't have any idea." And it was a big mystery for the longest time. And then people figured out that it was this SpaceX thing, right? So that was kind of interesting. But what he does here is he basically breaks this down and shows you, from all these people that got it on video in this perspective, going across, I think, California. And you can see very clearly that it is going horizontally. There is no doubt about it that it's going horizontally. It is not going into space. It even shows that it appears to be releasing certain payloads. I think he counts 9 of them or something like that. It's pretty crazy. And of course, this is the one that supposedly released all the Iridium satellites, right? And I think we actually talked about that, back in December when that supposedly happened. How nonsensical it was, because they were basically just kind of tossing these satellites out. But makes you wonder how they get them inserted into orbit properly, and all that stuff. But all that beside the point. It's very clear that when you look at this video, they never even made it into orbit. And in fact, it appears that there was a massive technical difficulty. And what's really cool is he highlights something that Jaron, you and I have talked about several times before, about when we look at this rocket, these rocket takeoffs, I mean, they literally just lumber. They go so slow. It takes them, 3, 4, 5 seconds to even clear the launch tower, right? So, I mean, they don't behave anything at all like any rocket that we've ever seen where, obviously if it was a real rocket and it behaved like a rocket, the astronauts simply would not survive the G-forces, if it took off like, normal rockets do. So instead, they try and tell us, well, it's because it's so big that your perspective, it just makes it look like it's going that much slower. But, even if you watch the little mile per hour thing on the side, it starts out going really slow and all this stuff. So I had to wonder, and I asked the question, it's like, how do they keep that thing from toppling over going at such a slow speed? And that's when Jaron and I got into this discussion about, Well, maybe the upper part of the rocket is actually filled with helium or hydrogen or something like that. I think it's helium, not hydrogen, because hydrogen would be super explosive, and helium not so much, even though helium does have some interesting characteristics when it gets near a flame. And I think you had a video that demonstrated that, right, Jaron, when they got a party balloon too close to a flame and it kind of ignited orange. Is that right?
Yeah, it lit up somebody's hair on fire.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. So anyway, but this guy, he's basically pointing out what's exactly happening, and he's looking at these plumes, right? And they're telling us that it's the oxygen, the O2, the liquid O2 is being used as a coolant and also an oxidizer and all this stuff, right? Well, he makes note of several problems with that. One, that it would be extremely explosive, and it makes more sense that what's actually going on here is these streams actually start rising, and that's because the air within them is mixing with the helium, and it's causing these streams to actually go up. And it's pretty amazing. Of course, what's funny is somebody tried to debunk that. They sent me a video of somebody discharging an O2 tank into midair, and it's under pressure, and it's shooting it straight up. It's like, see, that's what's happening. It's like, oh my God. But anyway, it's funny to watch some of the people try and debunk this. But then you get to scenes like this, right? And we've always thought that this looks really phony, but I've never been able to really put my finger on it as to what was going on. But when you watch this thing launch, right, it takes off, and it appears that what's happening here is there's no flame coming out here. What they're doing is they're firing up an extremely bright floodlight, right? And that floodlight is being projected onto probably, I don't know, carbon dioxide or something that's non-flammable, right? That's just going up. And there's really not any thrust being developed, because if you look at this, why is this plume allowed to go up, right? When you've got all of this stuff, all this thrust that should be just blasting it out to the side, and instead it's just leisurely rising up. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I was absolutely blown away when I saw that, and it's like, that's what it is. That's why it looks so fake, right?
Did you notice the flames being ignited from the bottom up when it just took, like, right as soon as it takes off? The flames start coming from the bottom of the ground, right there, from the bottom of the ground up.
Yeah, that would, of course, and the people, the ballers would say, well, that's because it's going down into a cavern area underneath it and then being ejected up. But, like I said, the things that are blatantly wrong with that is, first of all, if that was really O2 coming off the side, that would be really explosive down there, and that fire would set off an explosion like you wouldn't believe. Secondly, that thrust, look at it, he's saying, what thrust? Why isn't it blowing that cloud all over the place? Instead, it just rises so leisurely, oh, nothing, no big deal. So I think that what's going on there is, I don't know if it's partial CGI or what, but it's very clear that there is no huge force coming down from that rocket, because it should be blowing those things absolutely sideways, right? So pretty amazing stuff. And then
to lift that weight off the ground, you'd think it would just bust a hole in the ground.
You would think, yeah. But it doesn't. So, I mean, that's another thing that never really made a whole lot of sense to us either when we're looking at that. And of course, this guy, apparently is an actual physicist, and he talks about all these in depth. And like I said, this is on our channel. I published it this week, and it's doing quite well. It's well over 20,000 views, and I only published it a couple days ago. People are just going, oh my God, they're amazed at it, actually, and so was I. But so yeah, if you haven't seen this yet, you really need to see it, because I mean, that right there is so telling where it says what thrust. How can that be happening? How is that even possible that is happening and not blowing? A thrust of such magnitude is not blowing that stuff all over the place. It just rises and rises and rises. So pretty crazy stuff. So then today he releases another new video, and you gotta love this, because again, he talks about these particular thrust problems. And I'm just going to go ahead and play this video. It's only 5 minutes long. So do you guys have any comments before I start this video?
I was just going to say, I actually did watch that first one. I didn't know that it was from that content creator because I watched the one that you had reposted. And I did like it. I just wasn't able to read all of the notes on it. Some of them scrolled by too quickly. But maybe somebody could narrate it.
Yeah, they did. They actually did go by a little bit fast, which was a problem. But you can always pause it and read what he says. But believe me, everything he says is quite applicable. But yeah, that was an issue. All right, so let's go ahead and play this because this is great once again. And in the description, he says rocket science is supposed to be the pinnacle of the physical sciences, renowned for its apparent difficulty as it bewilders even the smartest among us. What is so bewitching about it, however, is the fact that it is a complete scam. The bottle rockets and backyard fireworks have nothing to do with these rockets they use to fake outer space. Take your money and make it seem like the Bible isn't true and God doesn't exist. Okay, great. So the CGI thrust is exposed here as the satanic rocket is launched to prove evolution and life on Mars. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play this because, again, this guy is rapidly turning into another one of my favorite YouTubers, UAP. If you haven't seen him, I'll definitely have it in the show notes, and I have a feeling we'll be mirroring a lot of his work because he really does some great stuff. So let's give this a listen.
Everything's manipulated by the time it gets to you. A real photo of reality should only have a single vanishing point, but this has two because there are the curved lines that meet at the top. It looks like it says Satan's Mars lander.
7, 6, 5.
They love their countdowns, and I guess they have the different sized rocket boosters on purpose. Now, if you look at the holes in the side, is that really supposed to be that way? And for it to be like frozen, cryogenically frozen from the compressed helium probably, or oxygen or whatever, hydrogen maybe. And, it looks like it has holes in it and it's leaking to me. And when something's really cold and then it becomes really hot and then really cold again, that would be a lot of stress. I wouldn't think that they would do that on purpose. And then here you have the wavy lines. That's obviously a manipulation, like Adobe After Effects or some kind of a digital manipulation to make it look like there's heat on the pad or something. But it's actually waving the frame of the picture, which tells you it's a digital overlay that was used. Effect. CGI. Okay, the light comes from behind the middle, and then look, even the letters are wavy. I think they use a combination of actual shots and CGI. Okay, the orange lights are on. It's time for the steam to come out, and the orange lights will light up the steam as long as it doesn't get in the way of itself. Okay, the light comes from behind the middle, and then look, letters are wavy. I'd like the trolls who tell me that I don't know science to explain to me how this explosion produces thrust. And let's assume it's not just CGI. It looks as if there's an explosion that was set off slightly in front of the rocket and nothing is coming out of the thrusters. Nothing. Liftoff of the Illuminati pyramid, Satan's rocket that it seeks to fabricate evolution and life on Mars, the god of war. And did you know that steam burns? And did you know that rocket exhaust makes steam all the way up to fake space? Look, if it were producing thrust, would that steam just float up in a leisurely way? Or the steam that's coming out of the back of the rocket, would it just hang in the air and not be pushed down? It's laid down at the rate at which the rocket is rising. How do you get thrust out of that? It's like being pulled on a wagon at 5 miles an hour and you throw oranges out the back of the wagon at 5 miles an hour, so they drop straight down on the ground and you're leaving oranges behind you and you're saying, this wagon's moving because I'm throwing out the oranges. So if this is a rocket, why is the exhaust igniting at maybe 10 or 20 yards behind it? How can that produce thrust? And if it's throwing out the rocket fuel and it's not even igniting till it's that far back, what good is it? And it just looks to me like those are just regular jet engines. Hence NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory and not, NASA Rocket Propulsion Laboratory. Because rocket science isn't science.
But that's part of the job, and we all deal with it different ways.
Yeah.
The Mars Phoenix lander is headed for the north polar region of Mars, and its goal will be to search for habitable regions, places where life may have existed in the past.
The phase that we're in now is called cruise.
Which sounds really easy and laid back, although it's actually a very busy time for the spacecraft teams.
We're busy.
It's actually a very busy time for.
Busy.
It's actually a very busy.
Busy.
A very busy time.
Okay. So anyway, for me, this really answers a lot of questions because it does. It appears like what's happening is they're shooting out some sort of non-flammable type of thing, or I don't know exactly what they're using for propellant, but we know that this thing is not behaving like any rocket that we've ever seen. We've all made the comment about, oh look at the speed. It's going supposedly 5,000 kilometers per hour. Now it's going 8,000, 10,000 kilometers per hour, and it's just lumbering across the sky. And they also show the elevation ever climbing when the rocket is clearly going completely horizontal. So what they're doing here is they're simply making a light show. They are ejecting some sort of possibly CO2 out the back of it, and then hitting it with very ultra bright lights. Maybe there's a little bit of holographic technology in those towers that surround it that may be assisting this. But one thing that is almost certain, and at least it is certain in my opinion, is that this, whatever they're doing is not rocket propulsion. I think that probably what is happening is, like Jaron and I kind of posited before, is they've got the top of that vehicle completely full of helium, and it is providing a vertical stability as well as it's assisting a lot in the weight. Now the vehicle itself obviously doesn't weigh much because it doesn't have a payload on it, nothing like that. And again, the telltale signs are obvious. It's not blowing its own cloud dust around, of rocket exhaust, not blowing it around. The lights are coming on pre-ignition. They're lighting it up with a brilliant amber type of light, and they also appear to be lighting it, from the craft itself as it goes along when it's up in space. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, it really looks fake to me. And in terms of what's in it, we'll probably never know. I mean, we know what they say is in it, but it's pretty obvious for the longest time now that any rocket that NASA or SpaceX launches, they go up 90 degrees for a time, and then they sort of angle the nose vertical, and then usually you can find the nose actually angling back down towards the ground. And it's right before that point when they always seem to cut to the CGI images of the little rocket in space. But
yeah, absolutely.
Who knows? I mean, we'll probably never know exactly what they're doing. But yeah, they could be using some sort of helium or hydrogen in there. Probably not hydrogen, like you said, but it's possible. I mean, whatever they could do to fake it, I wouldn't put it past them, because it's a whole lot easier and cheaper than what they claim to be doing.
Yeah, and they're going to do it in numerous ways so that you can never pinpoint it. They don't want anybody to ever be able to make a video and say, this is how they're faking it, and it be correct. So by doing it in many different ways, CGI and projection and something really going up in reality, all that mixed together makes it tough to just call it out. But like Bob said, there's a few important things you need to look at. Number one, that the thing is going horizontal here shortly after what we're looking at on the screen now, and it still shows it to increase in altitude at basically an exponential rate. It keeps going up and up and up and up, faster and faster, and it simply isn't happening. So there's so many things that we need to look at. I mean, here's one thing that people should recognize or should call into question. We've had how many launches that have sent people into space or to the space station or Apollo, Mercury, all these different missions, and we've never had a simple camera on an astronaut's head, like a GoPro camera that's just kept live for the entire trip. We don't get live video from the inside of the Soyuz, even though these guys are up in the Soyuz rocket, and then they're basically in orbit of the Earth for like 2 days until they, connect with the ISS. There's so many things that would be true, that would be evident, that would be, there if this whole thing was true, and they're not there. And that should be enough for you to question anything and not just give them the benefit of the doubt, which is what all Globers must do, is just say, well, there's reasons why we don't have a webcam that's just showed out the window of a rocket as it takes off to space. And there is no reason for it. And there's no reason why NASA would have no 24/7 view of the Earth. That is a disgrace. It's a slap in your face that if you're giving your donations, your money, it's not donations either, it's required. So if you're giving your tax money to NASA, the first thing they should worry about is repaying the people who make all their jobs possible, repaying the people who fund the whole operation with, I don't know, maybe a 24/7 view of where they live. And the fact that that is just skipped over, and then they just go about their merry business and they do all these nonsense events and tasks and satellite deployments, and we just let them get away with it. It's pretty dirtball. But I think this guy's right on about quite a few things. It is definitely a combo of many things. I do think he's right about projecting a light off of a steam. That if you pushed steam out of your helium balloon and then projected a light to make it look or appear as a flame, that I think you could pull this off, that it wouldn't be very difficult to do. And then they just point it downrange, and that thing right there is going to end up dropping in the ocean. And then when you look at where, for me, where the Bermuda Triangle is, which is exactly where these rockets would end up. And what better way to keep people out of the area than to tell them that if they go there, they're going to disappear. And it's probably true. If you end up there, somebody there will probably make you disappear because you just stumbled upon a graveyard of rocket parts. So, these things are all conjecture, sure. But when you're being lied to, sometimes you have to make some guesses. And then the more people who get together and kind of rule things out, we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. They're not going to be able to continue this nonsense for too much longer, simply because it is nonsense. You can only, what do they say? You can lie to some of the people some of the time, but you can't lie to all the people all the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. And that's what they hope to do. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that anymore.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, over in China or over near China, they have something very similar to the Bermuda Triangle. I'm curious to know if that's close to where the Chinese launch their rockets.
Interesting. And I know Ariane Space, they launched theirs from the French Guiana down in the northern parts of South America. And I'm wondering what's out there as well. But good point. And they'll never launch it over land. If they're so confident in these things, and there's never been a launch that I know of that's gone up and then just crashed out into the water that they say. So even if they were to just, rather than launch going east, if they were to launch going west across the United States, they'll never do that because they can't shoot it far enough to get to the other side of the ocean. And, John, remember we were talking about, too, that still, and Bob, I think you were not on that show, but what did you feel about, I can't grasp, they say that they launch from Florida east because they get the help of the Earth spinning, so they get that extra speed burst or whatever. But when I think about it, shouldn't you go the other way? Shouldn't you go, if the Earth is spinning to the east, wouldn't you launch to the west? Because that's how you would actually get the most speed burst, is to go opposite. I don't understand how going with the spin of the Earth increases your speed because you're actually, if you're spinning with the Earth and you take off and you're going with that speed, well, you still have to orbit the Earth with the direction that it's spinning. But if you were to take off the other way, then wouldn't that be the ultimate speed, is to get up and go opposite of the spinning Earth?
No,
Am I confused there?
I don't think so. I think you have it backwards. And think of it this way. Think of a rock inside of a sling, right? Like a David and Goliath type of thing when you're whipping it around. And what's happening is if you go with that, you're spinning that rock in that sling, right? And then you let it go, that rock already has the momentum of the same direction of that spin, right? In other words, they wouldn't want it to go the opposite way. You wouldn't get anywhere. So,
but if you're talking about speed, then coming off the rock going the opposite way would give you the most speed away from the rock.
Only relative to the ground. Remember, they're trying to get that speed increased in free space. So if you go the opposite direction, your speed would only be faster relative to the ground because the ground would be going in the opposite direction. It's kind of like two cars that would be heading towards each other, right? You have a closure rate speed, and that I think is what you're looking at and seeing it as, you would get this increased speed. But what you want to do is you want to go with the spin of the alleged spin of the Earth, right? So that you are thrown out not only with the thrust that you have, but it is supplemented by that extra 1,040 mile an hour gravitational thrust that you are trapped in supposedly. So no, I think that's right.
Well, here's my take on it, though. I don't think that the axial rotation would really do you anything at all in terms of orbit, because the spin of the Earth is only going to affect your velocity relative to destinations on the Earth. But in terms of the orbital velocity of the Earth, that would depend on the time of day. So if you launched a rocket at noon, then if you launched to the east, then you would be going against the opposite direction as the orbit. And if you launched a rocket at midnight, if you launched it west, you'd be going in the opposite direction as the orbit. And I think that is a valid point. So, like, it would be preferred if you launched at midnight to launch it towards the west, because, yeah, you would, hypothetically, once you take off, you would instantly get that bonus of traveling away from the Earth as the Earth travels away from you. And if you launched it, at noon, then you would want to, I had it backwards. If you launched it at noon, then you'd want to launch it, to the east, because the Earth would start taking off the opposite direction. But they never do that. And I think they pretty much, do they always launch during the day, or am I wrong?
No, they launch at night too. But Bob, I guess where I'm confused what you're saying. Oh, go ahead.
Well, they don't launch like at midnight, right? I don't think.
I think some of the Apollo missions and the shuttle missions, they used to launch at night. But Bob, when you're saying that they need to gain the speed, but not the speed versus the Earth, or in comparison with the Earth, so what is that speed measured off of? How do you measure speed in free space unless you have a body to reference against? And if it is the Earth, which is what you're orbiting the Earth, then don't you want to have the fastest speed in comparison with the Earth to be in orbit?
No, all right. Look at it this way, Jaron. Say you had a grinding wheel, right? Or something that's rotating at a fairly high speed, right? And it's rotating at 300 RPM, right? And then you take something...
A grinding wheel, like a saw blade or something?
Yeah, saw blade, whatever. Something that's going to catch it. And then you take a ball and you drop it down on that saw blade or grinding wheel, right? So what's going to happen? It's going to hit that grinding wheel, and that grinding wheel is going to grab a hold of it, and it's going to throw it in the direction that it's spinning.
Correct.
Okay. Well, the same thing is their philosophy of the spinning Earth, right? If the Earth is spinning, and in this case, of course, the rocket is already on the ground, but the Earth is spinning at 1,040 miles an hour. So essentially, they're saying that they're already using the Earth's momentum at 1,040 to launch this vehicle forward, so that it's already traveling at that rate of speed as soon as it comes off the ground.
So what I'm saying is, to go into orbit, for instance, let's say that they're going the speed of the ISS, which is 17,000 miles per hour. So you need to be going that speed in comparison with the Earth. So if you're already going 1,040 miles per hour and the thing slings you off the Earth in that direction, well, you still okay, you have the added 1,040 miles per hour, but also the Earth is spinning in that direction 1,040 miles per hour. So now you have to work even harder to get going 17,000 miles per hour in comparison with the Earth. However, if you went the opposite way of the Earth, as soon as you got outside of it, you would be going opposite of the Earth, therefore faster. The Earth is spinning towards you, you're going opposite of it. And if you're talking about your speed in relation to the Earth,
Yeah,
to
only,
me it seems
only with respect to the Earth, though, Jaron. You're only going faster with respect to the Earth.
But isn't that what an orbit is? That's what I'm saying. Isn't an orbit the speed compared to the body that you're orbiting? So
right.
they're not.
It would make it easier. So like think about it this way: you're in the back of a pickup truck, and maybe you should do this in a vacuum, which isn't possible. But if you spit off the back of the pickup truck as you're traveling, your spit's going to go like 100 meters or whatever. But if you spit forward, it's going to come right back in your face.
Well,
And
that's
so
because you've
yeah,
got
I
wind
totally
coming
agree.
at you. Yeah, I see what you guys are
Well,
saying.
right, but even if you did it in a vacuum, though, it would still be easier to launch something the opposite direction, because as soon as you release it and accelerate it in the opposite direction, then the truck or the Earth or whatever is going to also be going in the opposite direction. So you get that benefit. You don't have to work as hard, nor do you have to
You'd
go
almost
as far.
you'd almost get a double benefit.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that's why I've always questioned. I don't think what they're saying about the launch direction makes any sense. I understand what you're saying, Bob, but then I say, well, if they're saying that adds to their speed? Well, speed in relation to what? If you're talking about the Earth, then no. Then you, for instance, if you take that saw blade you're talking about and you drop that ball on it and it kicks it in a certain direction, well, the speed of the saw blade, then the speed of the ball being kicked in that direction, to me, is not faster than if the ball went opposite of the saw blade. Because then you get the benefit of the speed you're going in that direction, plus you get the speed that it's going in its direction, would add together for your total speed in relation to the saw blade. Now, if you're talking about there's a ground that the saw blade's on and it's spinning, well, no, then you're right. Then the saw blade would throw that ball in a faster speed in relation to the ground than it would, but there is no ground in their whole model. So to me, I've struggled because I can't grasp, unless there's something in relation, like what you said, like if your speed is not being measured in relation to the Earth. But if they're trying to get into orbit, which is what they say, then that is the only thing that there is to compare it with. So, I mean, this is just more of those mental gymnastics that they make us do, where it just simply, we're trying to describe something that is metaphysical. It's not reality. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's all kind of pointless anyway, because
Right.
Nothing's moving at all anyway. But you're right. It's just something to completely screw with your head. And that's what it's like what we did, I don't know, last week or 2 weeks ago, when we were trying to figure out oh gosh, what was we were talking about? Remember we got all confused with the curvature, something about it. It'll come back.
Oh, the refraction, or
the refraction. Yeah, as to what's up, what's down, with respect to what and going in what direction. That's one of those things where it completely screws with your head. And it's the same thing, that the ballers do to us when they say, "Oh, well, you have to count like Metabunk, right? You have to account for this hump in between you and something else, right?" And it's like, that's nonsense. There is no hump. And then what they do is, instead of looking straight forward, they look down at the ground, and that's where the hump comes from. But theoretically, if you're always on the top of the ball, then everything always drops away from you all the time, no matter what, right?
Right.
So again, it's that frame of reference thing, which is nothing more than an utterly confusing bunch of nonsense. And that's why you're right, Jaron, you can't live on a ball. One person can live on a ball on one position, but two people can't, because then everything is completely out of order with respect to each other, right? And
it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's nonsense. It really is. So
the whole idea of water being pulled to the center of the sphere, and all of it in concept maybe works. Maybe you could, obviously they've explained it in a way that works. And that's one of the things that they've done well, is they taught us all the words for things, right? So by saying the word refraction, or by saying the word gravity, that makes somebody feel like they're smart enough, that they're smart, just by saying those words. It's kind of like, I brought this up before, but I heard this podcast that was making fun of David Weiss. And they said, because David Weiss grew these cucumbers in his yard or in his garden, and said that, if he measured the amount of water that he watered them with in the soil before and after, that it's amazing that these cucumbers gain all this weight and gain all this girth and mass from where? You know, he kind of asked that question. And these guys were laughing and hee-hawing and saying, he doesn't even understand photosynthesis. He doesn't know about photosynthesis. And it's like, it's so funny because David knows the words photosynthesis, but he's smart enough to go beyond that and ask questions about it. Whereas these guys were in a position where they were just going to laugh and make fun of him because they knew the word photosynthesis. If anybody would have stopped and asked them, well, what the hell is photosynthesis? Explain it to us. Explain exactly what it is and how it works. They wouldn't have had a clue. But that's what they've taught people, is that if you know the word for things, then you're smart. And that's why the whole idea of orbital motion and the whole, oh, you don't even understand orbital mechanics. You can't even do a 3-body problem. These are just words that people say that makes them think that they're smart. And that's what I've said from day one, is I've had a problem with this idea of science being an easy way for idiots to feel smart, because all you need to do is just simply have these memorizations, have these words kind of memorized, and there's no understanding there. I don't remember the exact quote, but Leonardo da Vinci said something, that just because you can repeat what you read absolutely has nothing to do with understanding what you're talking about, and should never be used in any kind of argument. And that's what these guys' arguments all are. And once you try and call them on it and get them to explain something, they disappear. They run away because they can't explain it. It's just they know the words, and we should know why. It's because we were all taught the same words, right? We were all taught the orbital motions, and we were all taught how these things work. But when you really look at them, when you really try and break them down, they fall apart. The whole idea of living on a globe, spinning on a sphere that's sitting out in the middle of space, being held there by the word gravity. When you really start to put these things together, you realize the preposterous nature of it all. Yeah.
Boy, isn't that true? And I brought up a video that the guy named Althea Thune. I love that name.
Althea Thune?
Althea Thune. Basically republished a Rob Skiba clip in which he goes into that same argument about, 1 mile the guy's 8 inches below you, 2 miles 32 inches, and 3 miles the guy's at the other guy's feet. But yet, with respect to these other guys, like if you have a guy, let's go back to this just a sec. Like this guy, 32 inches, and he's only a mile away from here, but that means that he's 24 inches away lower. I mean, even this doesn't make any sense. I mean, it is so non sequitur, illogical, and everything again goes back to that basic frame of reference, right?
Yeah, again, it goes, if you are at the top of the ball, then it all makes sense. But as soon as you start having to replace, well, because then basically everyone's at the top of the ball. And then people would say, well, that makes sense to them because in space there's no up or down. And then you go off into that whole world, which is just simply nonsense. And in fact, even these mainstream physicists or astrophysicists that are looking at the WMD map are seeing that there is a preferred direction, that there are up and down, so it's just a matter of time until this all gets blown to bits, because they're basically grasping at straws at this point. And the reason why is because they've led us down a path that has nothing to do with observations, or at least that was its foundation. And that's kind of what I'm saying in my video about Aaron Ross, that he starts out by talking about in one of his videos that we had all these stupid beliefs until we discovered the Big Bang. And then he goes into how the Big Bang worked. And then he goes into the fact that there's redshifting galaxies, and then says that these redshifts prove that first people thought we were the center, but actually we're on this balloon that's expanding. It's like, hold on a second. Here's what people don't realize is that was never found observationally. That I've given that quote a million times of Edwin Hubble, who simply decided that the horror of a unique position was something that was intolerable. Therefore, they chose to go in the direction that we must be in the universe, and every universe must see the same thing that we see. So everybody sees everything moving away from it, which is a complete and total fallacy. That it may be true. He might be right. I'm not saying that, that's definitely wrong. He might be right. Okay, we could be part of. So then as a scientist, you need to look at both options and really measure both situations in all your observations. But what our scientists did is, because they have a worldview that does not include a creator, that does not include a God, that does not include being special, that it does not include a preferred place or a location or a special place, they chose to go in the direction opposite that and said, let's build everything around the idea that we're so modest, that we would never be the focus of things. We're not important. And they built the entirety of cosmology on that one decision that they made. And it's going to come back to haunt them because it has to, because it's not true. And how do we know that? Because the more that they build upon it, the more nonsensical it gets. And then they've had to add dark matter, and they've had to add all these other things because the idea of gravity is wrong. But if you have that as your foundation, as your axiom, as your starting truth, then of course anything you build upon that will be incorrect. And how have they held it all together? With NASA. Because people think that because NASA's doing what NASA's doing, that it means everything else has to be correct. But the truth of the matter is NASA's faking everything because all of the science behind what they're supposed to be doing is wrong. And I mean, that's in a nutshell the problem that where we're at with this whole thing is it all comes down to gravity. It doesn't show in the universe. It doesn't show in the galaxies. Well, the reason for that is because it's wrong. But they can't get rid of that because how is the Earth a ball? Well, the Earth's a ball because of gravity. So you lose that, then you got people questioning that part, and the entirety of science would crumble.
Yeah, absolutely. And and there's so many things, so many experiments that can be done to disprove the source of gravity. And one of those things is like the accelerometers that we talked about. And of course, accelerometers work based off of inertia, and they are not gravitationally based devices at all. And yet when we do experiments and we show that basically when you travel several hundred miles with an accelerometer, it never detects any pitch change, right? Well, the ballers come back and say, well, that's because it's constantly realigning itself with gravity. And it's like, really? Then why is it that you can take those same accelerometers, which they claim are sensitive enough to measure, things like this, and you can go stand next to a mountain or climb up halfway on the side of a mountain, and why doesn't that accelerometer then detect gravity at a perpendicular angle, to where it is, on the mountain, right? Why is everything still going down? And that's because the whole idea of mass causing gravity is complete and utter nonsense, and it is not and cannot be demonstrated anywhere. And the whole Cavendish experiment is so ridiculous. When you watch some of those, like, who was it? Sean Hufford that dropped that link.
Sent us that one.
Sent us that one. It's like
spinning.
Oh my God.
It's pretty classic.
It's so absurd.
So isn't it true, Bob, that in a vacuum that they say, okay, we put these two items in a vacuum, the feather and the bowling ball, and they both hit the ground at the same time? This is where I get confused. Is like people take that as a explanation for, but if gravitationally it has to do with the mass of the item, why would the feather fall at the same speed as the bowling ball? Unless you're saying that gravity pulls things equally at 9.8 meters per second squared, but it's not based on their mass?
Well, first of all, I think you're right. Honestly, I don't think that they would hit the ground at the same time. And that demonstration that was done inside of NASA's their vacuum chamber at Sandusky, Ohio.
The crying box.
Yeah, well, first of all, you can't get anywhere near the level of vacuum, not even close to the level of magnitude of vacuum that is supposedly in space. And secondly, it's very, very unscientific because they're dropping both of those things by hand. First of all, there could have been a minute difference in the time that they were released. And frankly, I think that they may be close, but they're probably not exactly the same. And the only way to really do that would be to make sure that whatever the mechanism is that drops them precisely right down to the microsecond at the same time. And then the mechanism that actually registers them hit the ground would also have to detect that right down to the microsecond. And I would bet that there would be a difference, and that would relate to what you're calling mass.
Well, wouldn't gravity, though, in their model, wouldn't that cause the two things to hit at different times? If gravity is a correlation between the mass and the distance between two items, well, then the mass of the bowling ball plus and the Earth divided by the distance would be it should have more pull. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's what you should. But Fran Anderson pointed out, and it's hard to tell on that video, and you actually cannot play that video, or you will definitely get a strike. But she noticed, and I tend to agree with her, that it seems like the feather actually falls a little bit faster because the bowling ball has a bit of a head start in terms of the top of the objects. And when they land, it appears that the top of the objects are aligned. So it seems like the feather fell a little bit faster in the vacuum. And the only thing I can think of that would explain this is that whatever is causing them to fall, we know it's not mass-based gravity, there's less work. Because, there is a algorithm or an whatever it is, an algorithm to determine what work is. It's like moving mass a certain distance. And so there's physically less work involved to move a feather to the ground than there is the bowling ball. And it really does seem like the feather falls a little bit faster.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is that mass is so often equated with weight, and really there is not enough of a differentiation between mass and weight. I mean, you might as well just call weight mass and mass weight, because really, as far as how it's defined, they don't really make any differentiation between what makes mass and what makes weight, and why are they actually different, right?
Well, they just base it on the gravity, so.
I don't get it either, because pounds relate to kilograms, right? And aren't the two supposedly measurements of the two different things? Or am I wrong? Like kilograms are supposedly measurement of mass and pounds are supposedly measurement of weight, or am I way off base?
No, that's what they say, but then they also use kilograms as weight.
Yeah, because a kilogram is just 2.2 pounds.
Right. It's just exactly. The only thing that becomes a question is if there's such places as the moon and there's such places as Jupiter. If there is such places as those and they have a differential in gravity, then your mass would remain the same, but your weight would change. So that's the only. But if we have no evidence of that, I mean, I guess you want to believe in the moon landings, but we have no evidence of that. So it's all, again, hypothetical, theoretical, and to me, it's not needed in the explanation of what gravity is, which is nonsense. It's simply, to me, that items with mass they can't be supported by the air. Right. The air is not able to support your massive body, therefore. And then people always say, well, why do we fall down? And it's like, well, because if we fell any other direction, then that would be down. So it just so happens that that's just a moniker or a title that we put with things. Whereas if it was any other direction, then that would be down, and then the opposite of that would be up. So it isn't really a preferred direction. It's just the way that anything with mass goes. And then the whole world kind of builds itself up in that fashion, to me, is everything heavier than anything that can support it is on the ground. And as you move up, things that can be supported by things layer themselves on the way up, just like helium and hydrogen can be supported by air, and so they're above air.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me just seems to be more of and if you really look at density and the way that boats float, it's just when you really look at gravity, it falls apart. They have to then bring in buoyancy, and they call that an upward force. It's like, wait, now there's an upward force of buoyancy, and it just all falls apart for me.
Right. Well, gravity isn't.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, gravity. I think gravity, as we've been taught, has nothing to do with mass. I mean, in the electric universe model, and the one that I have promoted quite heavily, it has to do more with charge potential. And honestly, I would like to see somebody really hold the fire to NASA's feet. Even in the Sandusky experiment, but again, like I said, you can't come anywhere near the level of vacuum to basically get a true test. But I would bet that if they were to measure it very precisely, that bowling ball would hit the ground beforehand. But in the electric universe model of gravity, it all goes back to this charge potential. And what gravity actually is the static dipole alignment effect. And again, this is very simple to picture this, guys, how this works. Just think of it as stacking a bunch of magnets, negative to positive to negative to positive to negative to positive, from the ground all the way up, to the ceiling. Well, it just so happens that you have to start with one polarity on the bottom, and that polarity on Earth is negative, and it is the Earth itself that is biased at that negative charge potential, right? And this is something we're going to get into.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and this has everything to do with what we were talking about, before the show that everybody heard about the rapture. But and I'll get into that in a minute, because I found that one particular argument very, very interesting. But when you're dealing with charge potential, okay, and you have a cathode as the Earth and the anode as the sky, or the dome in this case, in my particular belief, then everything lines up starting with negative, positive, negative, positive. We also have all the molecules in our body, all the molecules of everything are made up of atomic structures which have charge potential. They have electrons, neutrons, protons. And so what's happening is, just like magnets being stacked negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, the electrostatic field of the Earth also aligns with the electrostatic charges of everything. And as we demonstrated, there is virtually nothing that is not affected by electrostatic charge. So then you start looking at helium and hydrogen. Well, they have an incredibly simplistic atomic structure, don't they? Right? One electron, one proton, right? Things like that. And so that is why they are nowhere near as affected, right, by this alleged gravitational pull, and they tend to go up. This is where the density and buoyancy argument comes in, right? So it's really quite simple when you look at it in terms of charge potential and get rid of the nonsense idea of mass attracting mass, because that is not what is happening. That is not what gravity is. Gravity is actually this dielectric charge potential alignment that starts with the Earth as the negative pole and stacks up from there. And that's exactly what holds us to the ground. So, and I think that plasma physics is going to describe this quite well. And the thing that is kind of alarming about that is what's happening to the Earth's charge potential. Not only is it happening to our charge potential, but the charge potential is directly linked to our magnetic field. Well, it's no secret that the magnetic field is changing and it's wandering all over the place. And they are talking about none other than what? A pole flip. Well, they're not talking about a pole flip necessarily as the Earth is going to turn upside down. However, the effects may make it seem that way. But what they're talking about is the pole flip is actually a charge potential pole flip, right? And this is something that is giving us, we're getting some great hints about that in the Earth's magnetic field, in the quiescence of the sun right now. Things are very much definitely changing, and this all goes back to plasma physics, which we're going to touch on here in just a minute. So again, the whole mass attracting mass is utter nonsense. It really is, and it's been debunked so many times. You have to be completely lost in space to believe it, or you simply haven't looked into it very well, or you're just an Einstein NASA fanboy, because it's not the way it works. And the thing about it is the charge potential version of gravity can be demonstrated in a kindergarten classroom. It is so simple. With a balloon, rubbing it on your hair, or a rubber stick or a plastic stick that you rub with a piece of cloth, anything that will give it a charge potential. It's very simple. So,
but Bob, I could throw a ball out a window and it will fall to the ground.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, even water, even like if you run a tap water really lightly and rub a balloon against your hair and give it a negative charge, it'll bend the water towards the balloon. And a lot of globers, claim that, you have to have a opposite charge or a metallic object to get an electrostatic attraction, but that is just not true at all.
Yeah, well, and remember that, when you rub the balloon on your hair and you are bringing it near the water and it draws the water towards it, that's an electrostatic potential. However, water itself is diamagnetic, meaning that it is repulsed very weakly, but it is repulsed by magnetic fields, strong magnetic fields. So you have the electrostatic potential and you have the electromagnetic potential. And they are both absolutely directly related to each other. And, they interact with our environment as we know it by interacting with the gases in our atmosphere. So, all right. So with that, let's move on then to plasma. And let's kind of get into this primer. And again, we're going to just touch on some of this stuff this week, but it's very important to understand what plasma is. So let's start out with the wiki definition. All right, and I'll point out some interesting thing. Okay, plasma, meaning moldable substance, is one of the four fundamental states of matter, and was first described by chemist Irving Langmuir in the 1920s. Unlike the other three states, solid, liquid, and gas, plasma does not exist freely on the Earth's surface under normal conditions. Plasma can only be artificially generated by heating or subjecting a neutral gas, wow, I'm having a hard time today, to a strong electromagnetic field, to the point an ionized gaseous substance will become increasingly electrically conductive, and long-range electromagnetic fields dominate the behavior of the matter. Okay, so what that's saying is then that plasma is behaving much like, you know, a obviously matter and not a wave, because it has a high charge to it. Now, if we go down here and we look at it, all right, it says plasma is a state of matter in which an ionized gaseous substance becomes highly electrically conductive to the point that long-range electric and magnetic fields dominate the behavior of the matter. Now, let's go back to Dan Dimension's video where he was showing the sun, and he was talking about how the sun, when it rises and comes over the horizon, so to speak, or when it's coming closer to us, its electrostatic charge is literally fluorescing the noble gases, right? Specifically, well, the noble gases, which include neon, and neon is the thing that's giving us a lot of our color. But there are several noble gases that are being interacted with. Okay, so keeping that in mind, what I want to do, what I want to do at this point is go ahead and play this new video by Dan Dimension, and this is really good because, again, this is describing an interaction between electrostatic field and the noble gases and what's actually happening when we see sunlight, okay, and what's going on with the plasma in our upper atmosphere. What it's doing is it's electrifying the gases in the upper atmosphere, the noble gases, and then what in turn is happening is once they fluoresce, they are then creating another magnetic field around them, right, which is then having a cascade effect going across the noble gases. And this is why the sun is not necessarily this localized effect. Oops. And okay, I guess Jaron just lost his power, and so he'll be coming back. John, are you still with us? Oh my God, did we lose everybody? John, are you there?
No, I'm here.
Oh.
No, I'm here.
Okay, I felt all alone there for a minute. All right, cool. All right, so let's play this while Jaron's getting his stuff back together. This new video by Dan Dimension, it just came out this morning. Beautiful video, very instructional, and let's give it a listen here.
All right. Baltar, find me another expert. One that likes me this time, okay?
I'm a regular American. I'm down with
All right, well, please welcome your next guest, science guy Bill Nye.
Okay, please welcome my next guest, science guy Bill Nye.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
Science guy, I'd like for you to explain that it's okay that I'm able to transcend all laws of physics.
You must be part of science that we don't understand yet.
Liar!
You're from stuff that's too complicated for us at our level right now to get.
You big fat liar! You know what, Bill? I know one or two guys who might disagree with you.
Okay, so what I want people to see here is he says it is not the Tesla coil that is exciting the gas tubes in the back. The first row gas tubes are creating a new field And it is that field which is exciting the gas tubes in the back. So here we've got the electrostatic source, the plasma source that's down here, and it's obviously lighting up all of these. But what's happening then is when these are fluorescing, they are then generating their own EM field, right? That is becoming quite strong, and they are then in turn igniting, or not igniting, excuse me, they're fluorescing the gases in the tubes from the light bulbs behind it that are also filled with these particular gases. And let's see, yeah, where is it? All right, so he's talking about hydrogen, helium, methane, water vapor, carbon monoxide, and neon are a few of these lighter than air gases that generate EM fields when ionized. So let's continue on. Now, one thing that they tell us, and this is nonsense, I couldn't believe it. We covered this a few weeks ago, where they're talking about some of the lighter than air gases like helium specifically, or neon or anything like that, are supposedly colliding with something that is then causing them to accelerate to Mach 33, or 33 times the speed of sound, or what is it, whatever it is, 25,000 miles an hour, whatever it is, the escape velocity is. It's a ridiculous speed. And they're saying that basically all of these lighter than air gases are being knocked out of the upper atmosphere, which is nonsense. And the only reason that they want to say that is because they don't want to, again, lead anything back to the idea of any electrostatic field coming from the sun that is fluorescing these gases, right? Well, one thing you're going to see here in just a minute is Dan is going to show some footage where the sun is coming up over the horizon. Let's use that term loosely, but it's coming around within visual range. Let's put it that way in our visual acuity. And there is a localized field around it that becomes bright. And you will see that off to either side of it is a darkened area. Well, why would that be? In a heliocentric model, where they're telling us that what's happening is the sun is coming over the horizon, and you know that's what's giving us our sunrise, we should have a completely even horizon going across there, right? Even if it was the ball area, right? Even if it's a ball, you would have the most blockage at the area towards the sun itself, right? And theoretically you would get the sides lighting up first, and then you would get a nice even distribution of light all the way across the horizon. Well, that isn't the way that it happens, and we've all seen that a million times. Let's watch him and his footage here. See, we can pan around and we've got daylight on one side and night on the other. This is what gives us the beautiful colors of our sunrises and sunsets. It has nothing to do with the refraction so much as it has to do with the fluorescing of the noble gases. And we've all seen this localized effect, right? On sunrises, especially from a high vantage point. In several airliners, the airliner shots, you can see it from the ground a lot of the times. If you just happen to be in the right spot. Here he's going to show it from an airliner, but it is, daylight, for whatever reason, appears to be a very localized effect. And in a sphere model, I can't see how that could ever be true. John, can you see how that could ever be possibly true in the heliocentric model?
No, not on a globe Earth model. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, me either.
It would be one. It would be one or the other. Like I don't know. We've never been on a ball, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, that is a really good point. We've never been on a ball, so it's really hard to say. And here we are flying into daylight. Again, a very, very localized effect. And, you don't even have to be moving to see this. It simply is a different explanation altogether. Again, the ballers will tell you that because we're rotating towards then the sun, and it's coming up over the horizon and just barely lighting the horizon. But again, if we were on a heliocentric model and a ball, it would light the entire horizon evenly, especially from our perspective. We would not be able to look to the left and see nighttime and look to the right and see daytime. I mean, that just doesn't map out. That doesn't work. And I'd like to see somebody actually try and to model that, but I don't think it's possible for that to happen. But I could be wrong, but I doubt it. So I think that the more likely reason that we see the phenomenon the way that we do is because of exactly what Dan Dimension is positing here, is that daylight is more of a localized phenomenon. It is cast out, obviously in a large area around it, but it's not because of the throw of the light of the sun so much as it comes from the charge potential that is turning the noble gases into plasma, right? That's exactly what we're seeing. And again, this is something that once again you can demonstrate all day long in a lab, and it's just something that's very simple to see. Again, nature does things very simplistically, like Theoria Apophysis or Ken Wheeler likes to say. It's all very, very simple and very easy to understand. And part of the deception is the convolution in trying to make it, trying to obfuscate, the truth of things by making things so incredibly complicated, by introducing the idea of gravity and centrifugal force and falling at these outrageous speeds and ridiculous things like you don't see the stars ever change, over hundreds or not thousands of years because we're so far away from them. Completely not taking into consideration simple things like there's only so far that you can see light. It has to obey that inverse square law. It's just unbelievable how they have obfuscated it. And I think, Mark puts it well. Blah, 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 blah. Or no, bah, ha, ha, okay. It's funny. It's ridiculous. So, again, these things are very simplistic, very easily explainable by plasma physics and the gases that are actually doing things. All right, so, Darren, you're back.
I am.
Okay.
I lost power for some strange reason again.
Yeah, you glitched out on power. That's so weird. Do you guys have above ground power lines or below ground power lines there?
No, they're below ground. There's none above the house. But it's something, it just keeps being in this room for some reason. So I don't know. I'm going to have to call somebody because we certainly don't have anything enough hooked up that it should shut the power down.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't think. But, sometimes they just have these glitches. And again,
Yep.
This could also have everything to do with, the field of the Earth that's going kind of crazy right now. And if any of you actually follow this and look at space weather, right? And space weather is basically monitoring things like charge in our EM field and also the activity of the sun. And you will notice that the sun right now is going through an incredibly quiescent period. A lot of people would call it a Maunder minimum. And of course, when you have a Maunder minimum condition, typically what happens is you kind of get more of a miniature ice age type of condition. Temperatures actually drop, so global warming, of course, becomes nonsense again. So, all right. So basically,
Yeah, because there's like no sunspots.
yeah, yeah, hardly any at all. They're just almost non-existent, and that's that's indicative of the sun being very quiet, and so things are definitely changing with our electrostatic and our electromagnetic potential across the plane. And I don't think that can be disputed at all, because that's why so many airports are having to renumber their runways, because literally magnetic north is changing. And this is one of those very, very slow cycles that I think happens every so often. And there's not a whole lot that we can do about it. And of course, it's spoken of in a lot of different ways. It's spoken of in biblical verses. It's spoken of in lore, right? Supposed mythology, things happening, things that they can see in the sky. One of the things that the Thunderbolts project talks about is the ancients would draw these symbols that looked very much like plasma discharges. And this is something that has occurred worldwide, all over the place. And it's because they were seeing these things in our skies. They didn't know what they were, but they saw them in the skies. And one of the most interesting things is, of course, the classic thunderbolt of the gods, the thunderbolt that Zeus allegedly had cast. And it has a very interesting shape to it. But again, this is a formation that comes straight out of plasma physics. So before we move on to the other guy that we want to talk about, one thing that I do want people to look up, because we are going to be covering this quite a bit in depth, is we've talked about this guy before, but there's a guy named David Lapointe, and David Lapointe did this video called The Primer Fields. Actually, there's 3 of them. There's part 1, 2, and 3. I don't know why he never finished out his series, unless he was just too close to things. But basically what he did is he figured out that, isn't it interesting, if you use these oh geez, what am I trying to say? The plates, what does he call it? I'm drawing a complete blank here. Anyway, basically the electrodes on an anode and a cathode, and if they're shaped in the shape of a dome, right, both on the top and the bottom, you get some very interesting plasma fields that come out of them. Not only do you get the typical toroidal pattern that comes out of it, but you will also get a rotating field that goes around the center of this plasma discharge. Now, this is very much akin to what we're saying is going on with the Earth. You have rotations of these fields. You have what's called the dielectric inertial plane in the center, and then you have rotating fields going opposite directions on the top and the bottom. This is something that can be replicated all day long in the lab. Okay, and he's showing some demonstrations about this. And one thing that he found that was super interesting is these, gosh, I wish I could remember what he called this. I could turn the sound on. But these bowls, right, that are acting as the electrodes, essentially, are modeled in CERN, of all places. They're building designs. They're also modeled in like Capitol dome buildings. You see interesting things like this is the U.S. Capitol, right? And I don't know if anybody knows what this is. It's called the apotheosis of George Washington, where basically George Washington is brought up to the level of a deity. And wait a minute, I don't think this is apotheosis. This is not the right one. But anyway, in our state capitol, it does have that, where George Washington is essentially brought up to the level of a god. And what they're trying to say is that he is going up above this plasma field and going into these other realms that's talked about in like Vedic cosmology and stuff. So anyway, all of this ties directly to plasma. It all ties directly to magnetic fields and the patterns. We see this pattern take place not only in magnetic fields, but we see it take place in atomic structure. Absolutely identical type of fields. And isn't it interesting the way that these balls will repel each other and they will stay in a very uniform pattern that happens to be perfectly geometric in so many ways. Now here's these bowls again that are shaped just like the CERN building. And one of the things that is interesting that happens is you can take a non-magnetized steel ball, and when you get up towards the top of one of these toroidal fields, it has a trap zone, right? And when we look at things, when we actually start looking at this magnetic field, we can see some very interesting patterns that emerge out of these magnetic fields that look a lot like nebulas, right? And I think he actually shows this in several different ways. But this is something that you guys need to look at and kind of get an understanding for this toroidal magnetic field, and then we can kind of talk about how this magnetic field, which is changing on our Earth, and how that is affecting plasma. So now the reason that is significant, and this kind of brings us to this particular video series, and I know that David has been kind of going around promoting this heavily, and he wanted me to watch it, and I watched it, and I was kind of amazed with it. Although I do think that the first several parts of it, there are a lot of inaccuracies, and I don't think he got a lot of things right. But this guy, Brian Austin Lambert, has this video series that he's come out with, and currently it's up to 24 parts. Okay, 23A. Yeah, there's 24 parts. And he has some very, very interesting things that he talks about here. And all of this is based on a plasma model. And one of the things that I think is incredibly interesting about what he said is he starts talking about the supposed rapture, right? And as many of you probably heard, we were talking about the rapture. And I wasn't exactly sure what the whole rapture thing was about, other than I had heard that, basically when you get raptured, you kind of go floating up to heaven. And I guess that's not something that is necessarily in the Bible. But Jaron, could you kind of reiterate where you got the rapture and the idea behind it from, or where it comes from?
Well, I think it's like a Jesuit, another Jesuit farce. It's not biblical. But basically, because I don't think it came around until like the 17th century, which is interesting because it's like everything else. But yeah, the Bible doesn't really describe that event happening where humans would be taken up with Jesus if the believers would go, and that would leave the non-believers here for 7 years of tribulation. But I think, maybe John has a better description of what is actually supposed to take place, or what the Bible says is going to take place. But the idea of the rapture, and I if people didn't hear me before, I think and let me make sure this is true, but I think if you look up the word rapture, I always thought it was interesting that it's not, you would think rapture, okay, that tells me like destruction or some sort of hectic event. But the definition of rapture is a feeling of intense pleasure or joy. Ecstasy, bliss, exaltation, euphoria, elation, joy, enchantment, So I always thought that was interesting. But I guess that's what it's supposed to be, is the joy of being taken with Jesus as a believer. But maybe John can help explain a little bit more of what the actual Christian belief would be. Or I could read the Wikipedia for it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, like from what I've gathered, a lot of it comes from like the whole Left Behind paradigm, right? That old movie series or whatever, where there's a lot of people, and it seems like it came from like evangelicals, or maybe the people that like drink arsenic and let poisonous snakes bite them or whatever, that the rapture is supposedly going to take believers up prior to the tribulation. And to me, that seems rather anti-biblical, because one of the things that is biblical is that believers are going to suffer terrible tribulations. And so it's sort of a I don't know, not a conundrum, but it's
get out of jail
antithetical.
free card.
Yeah, it's antithetical to the whole message of tribulation, that it's really going to be a test of faith to endure the tribulation. And if you have this rapture concept where the believers get out of jail free card from the tribulation, then it defeats the whole purpose of the tribulation, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't agree with the pre-tribulation rapture at all.
And the Bible says Jesus will come back and judge everyone. It doesn't say he will come back and take people with him somewhere and then come back again. So, which is what kind of the rapture is describing, is you will go up with Jesus, but then how will he judge that he will have to come back later? So it kind of is, I don't know where it caught such hold, because there's a ton of people that believe in it, where it's not biblical. So, I maybe have a little soft spot for people who are Bible believers, but when you've gone past that and say, no, now I'm going to make up my own doctrine, even beyond that, and I'm going to include, then it gets crazy to me. I don't know how you could believe in any of that.
Right. So basically,
I don't even.
It comes down to, this isn't necessarily in the Bible, but it appears to be something that comes out of the Jesuits or Freemasonry, possibly even as well as I'm kind of getting it.
Yeah,
and
17th century, 18th century things that were taught. That a few guys who wrote books, and Francisco Ribera was a priest that taught it. Even I think Irving, the same guy. I can't think of his name now. But yeah, it's just not biblical. It's just taught within the last 200-300 years.
Right. So
yeah, and the same sort of thing with like the whole idea of hell, in my opinion, sort of comes from Dante's Inferno, which was I don't know if it was the 17th century, but it certainly wasn't in the biblical times, right?
Right. So basically what he's saying then in one of these videos is he goes on, as he's talking about the date that this rapture is likely to occur, or I guess you could call maybe even this catastrophe type of thing. So here he has VO Part 8 catastrophe date, the only date it can happen on the flat Earth. And basically what he's saying is that this is starting to take place on none other than Christmas Day, right? And then 7 days later, which I don't know if you want to interpret that as a tribulation, but that would in actual be in days, not 1,000-year days or anything like that. But 7 years later, this effect is essentially complete. And on January 1st, you have essentially entered into the new world, because everything will have been destroyed. Now, what does he mean by this? And this is the part that I found really interesting, because if we're looking at everything based on a plasma physics type of idea, and we already know that our magnetic field is shifting, I guess one of the things that it says in the Bible is that you will be able to tell when this is about to happen by the shortening of the days. And he says that's one of the reasons why the elites try and screw around with the clocks and daylight saving times, inserting leap seconds, yada, 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 to basically keep the people unaware and off guard about this. And he even said something to the effect of, I guess St. Peter's Basilica is this large type of sundial in the middle of the Vatican. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But what he's saying is that unbeknownst to most of us, our days are indeed getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And when just before this supposed rapture occurs, and these catastrophes actually fall, which supposedly will fall on Christmas Day, Christmas Day will be the day that it actually begins. And, I got to tell you, I find that interesting, because I've thought about that myself. And I would say that the likely date, and this is just me spewing out nonsense here, would be within the next 2 years, or by 2020 at the latest. But what he's saying is happening is that the field will change enough that it will change our plasma construct around us, the sky, right? The sun is a plasma thing, that essentially the sun will stop in its tracks, right? The stars will no longer light. They will it goes along with this story in the Bible and Revelations about, the stars falling from the skies, the sun stopping, and all this stuff. And all of this is a result of this magnetic field changing the plasma. And of course, what's going to happen is when the plasma goes awry, it's going to set a lot of things on fire. And this is something he did not say, but this is something I'm extrapolating out of it. So it's interesting to hear that, the last time humanity was destroyed, it was done by a flood. This time it's supposed to be by a fire. Well, plasma gets really, really hot, guys, and this is something that's incredibly easy. Now, he also went on to say, and he hasn't explained this yet, but he said that there are certain places on Earth that are going to be the safest to be. And he's talking about those places are around the 33rd parallel, 33rd degree north latitude, And I found that very interesting. Now, he didn't elaborate on that, but I thought about that for a while, and I started thinking about these geometric patterns that the toroid would take and these contortions it would be going through. And then I thought, all right, so if that's one of the safest places to be, what exactly is on the 33rd degree north latitude parallel? Well, lo and behold, one of the first places that comes to mind is Phoenix, Arizona, right? And what is the myth behind the Phoenix? The Phoenix is resurrected from the ashes, right? Very interesting. The other place that is on the 33rd parallel, at least here in the United States, is none other than Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta, along with Denver, is supposedly slated to be one of the main New World Order headquarters, right? Interesting stuff, right? And he didn't say any of this. This is all just stuff that I was thinking about. So I don't know. I am intrigued by it. I'm very intrigued by it. And I think that, it's definitely worth looking into. But so Jaron and David Weiss and myself are going to be talking to Brian Lambert this week, and kind of and we're going to try and get him to elaborate on some of this, because he insists that this is largely correct. And I have to tell you, I mean, he sounds like a nice guy and everything, but if you have listened to the series, or when you do listen to this series, he does come across as a bit narcissistic, a little bit. And I think that he's so absolutely sure of his model that he may be a little bit overconfident, because like I said, in the first several parts, I've found several things that I take issue with, but hopefully we'll be able to get those ironed out with him and get him to elaborate a little bit on this. But I also find enough of it, especially in the latter part of the series, like going from like part 18, maybe 17, up to 23A, I find a lot of that as having a lot of merit, and I find it super interesting. And so this is something we're going to be talking to him about, but it's pretty crazy. You put all this into perspective in a plasma universe, and it's like, wow, this could not only start to coincide with a lot of quote unquote mythology, but also some biblical prophecy as well. So I don't know, just super interesting. And Jaron, I know you haven't watched all of this, but the parts that you have watched, are you kind of understanding where he's coming from with the plasma? Of course, we've covered a lot of that today, but and in Racer Effie, if we can get him on the show, I would love to. But he says he kind of doesn't like to be on live shows because he gets pretty passionate. Let's put it that way, and I can respect that. So maybe when we talk to him, I can kind of repackage it and reiterate what he's trying to say and elaborate on it a little bit more. But what the hints that he has given us, I find intriguing, to say the least. So this video series will be in the show notes, and people definitely will want to check this out along with the primer fields, and then learn as much as you can about the EM fields, electromagnetic and plasma, until we get back to this, which hopefully will be next week, and we can elaborate on this further. But wow, this is really some crazy stuff, guys.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I'm looking forward to the conversation with him to hear some of this stuff, because I mean, I've always thought that as much as I may not believe that the Bible is from God, I do believe that they've used it to hide things in it. So I think that there is some, you can call it prophecy if you want, or a playbook that they're kind of going by. And because that keeps people in the belief of it, which is what they want, and then also allows them to kind of foretell their the future and their story and what they're trying to have come to fruition. So no, I'm interested in what he's got to say, especially when it comes to the sun, because that's something that I've definitely seen that they have predicted, or that they say will come to pass, is that the sun will torch everybody on Earth or whatever. So it'll be interesting to hear what he's got to say.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
as far as plasma goes, it's a really interesting topic to me in general, because there's pretty good evidence that there are ionized gases at high altitudes, and globe earthers claim that the spectroscopy that we get tells us what sort of gases are being, well, not ignited, but undergoing hot atomic fusion, which is theoretical in the sun. But we know that those gases also exist in our upper atmosphere. So we could easily just as easily say that the spectroscopy proves that the sun is merely an electromagnetic phenomenon or a plasma phenomenon locally. And to me, in a flat Earth reality, it makes a lot more sense that the sun itself is it's not a physical object orbiting, but it's the result of ionized gases at high altitudes that are illuminating. And again, the spectroscopy sort of proves as much. There really is no fundamental basis to say that the sun, in the globe Earth physics, is undergoing this hot atomic fusion, because that sort of thing can't be demonstrated. It's theoretical. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and I think that when we do delve down the plasma and electromagnetic road, we're going to find a lot more answers than we ever would in a globe Earth sense, or without taking that venture in a flat Earth sense. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. And speak of the devil, I clicked on my bell here and I saw Brian Austin Lambert 33 uploaded VO Bart 23B. I made a big mistake on flat Earth. Now I'm really curious as to what this is all about, so we'll have to watch this, because I have no idea what this is about. Like I said, it just was uploaded 23 minutes ago, and obviously we've been on the show for longer than that.
Is he a flat earther, or was he a flat earther, or he was a globe earther?
No, he's a flat earther. He's definitely a flat earther. So I don't know. We'll have to see what that's all about. But very interesting developments. But like I said, I definitely found some problems with some of his model, and I wanted to ask him about that and kind of talk to him about it. I guess David Weiss has talked to him in depth about this, and he said that his mind was kind of blown. But we'll see what happens. But it's something to look into, because like I said, I do find some merit into it. And this whole idea of the rapture, let me get back to that part. So if you subscribe to the electric universe model of gravity, right, which is this dipole static electric model, right, and if we do indeed have a pole shift, meaning a magnetic pole shift, well, then that's likely going to change the potential of our cathode and anode in our little terrarium circuit here. And so what that could be then kind of drawn as an analog to is the rapture, right? People actually kind of losing their gravitational hold, being held down to the earth and start floating up. Now, he said that the best chance of surviving this is on the 33rd parallel, and the effects wouldn't be as severe there. And of course, like I said, it's interesting because Phoenix is there. Phoenix is the bird that rises out of the ashes and is reborn, yada, yada, yada. So I don't know, just putting the pieces together here. But it's interesting to think that that is entirely possible, because remember, I said a long time ago in talking about this gravitational model, since it is the Earth potential itself that sets this bias as to what is up and what is down, then obviously if we were to reverse that, things would likely start floating up, right? If you reverse the charge potential, things would start floating up. Again, this is all speculation, but it's also something that can be demonstrated in a lab, demonstrating plasma physics, and you can get charge potential to reverse, and you get things to be repulsed or attracted or whatever. And that's something else that I said that is acknowledged in these videos, is that when you're dealing with plasma physics or electrical phenomenon in general, it is always scalable. always, always, always scalable. You can do something on the very lowest level and expand it out to the greatest level, and the parameters, the physics, still hold true in it. And that's why when we look into the sky, with our telescopes, and we see things that appear to be nebula or taking very strange, odd shapes. Again, these are nothing more than plasma adhering to magnetic fields that are up in space. Now, the electric universe guys are talking about these massive electric currents that are going on for light years. In the flat Earth model, it's a whole lot simpler. There are definitely those types of things, this energetic matrix grid that is going on up above us, thus the starlight, thus the study of astrology, right? And the energetic influences in the sky that are affecting us, because this is all part of our habitat. And again, all of this is my opinion. I'm not stating this as fact, but I do like to think outside the box, and I think that a lot of this has merit to it. So there you have it. Pretty crazy. All right, so I guess what we will do, and we'll wait to see what Brian says, and Carolyn said she watched it, and he's kind of, this guy is, he's like I said, he's a little bit egotistical and he's a little bit narcissistic, but as I have noted so many times, that a lot of people that are really smart are oftentimes kind of on the edge of being kind of nutty as well, and we deal with that a lot in this community. So I don't think this should be any big surprise to anybody that would kind of look at that those characteristics, those personality characteristics. So, okay, so we're going to take phone calls here in just a few minutes. But I do want to throw a plug in for the Flat Earth UK convention here, which is coming up in 5 days, 10 hours, 51 minutes. And you can get a virtual ticket to it for £20 by going to this particular website, and I will have it in the show notes. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to paste this in the chat so that the mods can repaste it. Hopefully it'll work right. There it is. Okay, so mods just kind of keep reposting that. Or you can go to the www.flatearthconventionuk.co.uk. And again, like I said, that's happening in 5 days. Ira Landucci will be there. He's getting on a plane as we speak. So that would be super. And like I said, if you can't make it there, which, obviously in the United States, it's very pricey. I think £20, which is like $22, $23, something like that, American. Very, very worthwhile, I think, to be able to watch it. And so, yeah, that'll be great. All right. So, you guys, I guess let's take some phone calls. And let me move this over here. All right, so
And I'll just, on my end real quick, I'll just speak that if people are wondering what's going on with NASA, I've sent 2 emails to that person and neither one of them have been replied to. So tomorrow I'm going to call that office and try and talk to that person who responded about the video, because I want to make sure before we put a GoFundMe together, anything to get that money, that at least we know for sure we're going to get that tape. So I kind of want to speak with her. And she's not responded to my email. So that'll happen tomorrow. And then also I wanted to remind everyone of the May 12th meetup down in, now I can't think of it. I want to say Palm City. What is the name of this? I'm thinking Palmdale. Thank you.
Oh, Palmdale.
Palmdale. That's
a lot of people were curious as to if you were going to the one in Sacramento also, Jaron, on Star Wars Day.
Which is when?
May the 4th be with you.
Oh, boy.
So it's on.
I'm not positive yet. I will look into it and see if I can make it.
Yep.
It's pretty close to me, so.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours
I'm going to predict, as far as the FOIA request, NASA has a bad habit of losing tapes. And so I would not be at all surprised, even if they give you all kinds of assurance that when it comes down to it, we may just be disappointed by them. Oh, well, we lost it, or we taped over it with reruns of Alf or whatever.
You don't think that they'll steal the money, though, do you?
Oh, of course, they'll keep the money for sure. They need it bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, okay, yeah. Gary says it's $27. I'm sorry. I got the conversion rates different, but anyway, still worth $27. But yeah, I think that's a distinct possibility, Jaron, that they could come up and, like you said, they could come up and say, "Oh, well, yeah, we have it," because they already admitted that to you that it was there. But then they could just all of a sudden say, "Oh, we found something that's national security."
Or we recorded over it. There's an episode of Alf on there instead. So
yeah, but
I think that I want to force their hand anyway, is what I think the goal is. But I'd like to do that without the possibility of losing people's money. So
I agree, but we've also made that abundantly clear, and I'm sure people understand NASA as a criminal organization enough to know that it's likely that they could do that, or they will do that, or whatever. Obviously, you will be transparent with any correspondence you have with them, but I wouldn't put anything past those clowns. You know, they'd rip you off just to spite you because you cause them so much heartache.
yeah, interesting that she hasn't responded. So hopefully she's been out of the office for 2 weeks or something, or else we'll talk to her tomorrow.
Yep. And the other thing is, and I have to say this also for those critics out there, we never asked for any fundage to fund this. We simply mentioned it, and all of a sudden we had $1,000 worth of donations, just like that. So it's kind of like, well, I guess the people have spoken, right? In fact, Jaron was saying, I don't think it's a good idea because they'll probably screw us over on it or whatever. But the donations poured in, the people have spoken. So, I mean, I think that's what they want you to do, Jaron. So
I think so too. And we want to be careful. It may be about $1,000. It was 600 from one guy, but they did it through Super Chat, so Google takes 30%.
Yes, they do.
So I don't think it's at 1,000 yet, but that'll all be transparent as can be. As soon as I get the confirmation that they have the video or that they won't be trying to steal our money, then we'll count it up and see where we're at.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough, and that's the best we can do. Because, like I said, it certainly was not Jaron's idea, our idea. We brought it up, and bam, it's like, wow, guys. And that's what I love about our audience, though. I mean, they're awesome. They know that we're out here looking for the truth, and it's not about lining our money with our pockets with money, because it isn't. And you know, we're talking about it. Jaron's looked into it, and if people want that to be done, then like I said, the funds come in, and well, then we will spend it on that. But as long as everybody knows that. We have no idea what NASA's going to do, and they could screw us all, and likely will. But hopefully that won't happen. We'll see. All right, so I'm putting the number in the chat right now. Area code 303-225-1019. The phone lines are open, so if you want to call in, go ahead and do so, and we will take these calls. And I hope I can find my thing when it comes up. I seem to have lost my little deal that allows me to answer the panel. Let's see.
Oh, the Google number thing?
Yeah. Let's see what happens here.
And so just May 12th is that meetup down in Palmdale at Marie Kerr Park from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. And you can email neta073@yahoo.com for more info.
All right, there you have it. Okay, so it's open, and lo and behold, here come. Whoop! One came and one went. There we go. Okay, here we go. All right, you are on with GLOBEBUSTERS. Who we got?
Wow! I wish I was winning some kind of competition. I've never gotten through this fast.
You've won.
Hey guys. My name's Travis. I have a channel called The Plain Truth. I appreciate you guys so much and respect you guys so much. I'd like to, if we can, I'm not sure how long this conversation can go, but I want to address your concern about the rapture. My view is not the view that you're describing. In the Christian movement right now, there is a movement that is just as controversial as flat Earth is in science with traditional Christianity about what is called the end times. And the controversial position that is like the flat earth is called preterism, which comes from the Latin term praeter, which we get the Spanish past tense, the preterite tense is the past tense.
Okay.
So the idea is that the events that you're talking about have already happened. Okay, so when you talk about the sun and the moon and the stars coming undone and seeming to come out of their natural habitats, in the preterist interpretation is those things are in the past. They've already happened. And that needs a whole, semesters long worth of discussion in terms of biblical interpretation. But what I'd like to say is that the reason why the events that we would maybe look at in terms of, well, look, it says the rapture, or it says this, and it says this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. The reason why we think that it's prophetic for us is because we're thinking literally. So that if the sun and the moon and the stars are supposed to truly come undone physically and naturally, well, obviously they haven't happened yet, so it's still in our future. But that's not the interpretation of the preterist interpretation. The preterist interpretation takes the language that we're looking at symbolically, and they have reference to historical events that happened in the first century. To address your question about rapture, Jaron, I think that you are addressing a connotation of the Latin term in terms of ecstasy and pleasure and whatnot. I would say that is a connotation. That's not the denotation of the word. The word rapture comes from the Latin. The Greek word that the Latin word translates is harpazo. And the word simply means to be caught up, to be taken or caught up in some sense, however you want to catch. If you want to catch up water in a bucket, that's the word that you would use. It's caught up. So what we're dealing with ultimately is an issue of interpretation. So we look at the text, we say, okay, this is what the text is saying, but the ultimate question is, what does it mean? And I grew up in the traditional evangelical church, and my views have changed so much so that I'm a pariah even in my own congregation, because I do not take the traditional view of what we're reading in the New Testament. So I don't know if that elicits any questions for you guys on my end, but I just wanted to get that in.
Okay.
Can you hear me or no?
Yeah, can you hear Jaron?
I cannot. I can only hear you, Bob.
Oh, really? Say something, Jaron.
Oh, well, Bob, ask him if that means that, according to him, is this the second resurrection?
Okay, so
are we the second resurrection?
Jaron wants to know that, according to you, do you believe that are we the second resurrection?
Yeah, I'm dropping out. I can't.
Oh, that's not good.
I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't even hear what you just said.
Okay.
If it's,
he wanted to know. Jaron actually asked that question again, Jaron, because I kind of lost it.
You had it. Just ask him if according to that mentality or that thought, are we the second resurrection? The people living today.
Okay. Are the people living today, are we the second resurrection then, according to what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, the resurrection has, it's a nuanced idea. It's not a physical resurrection. It's not bodies coming up out of the ground. It has to do with a corporate identification and restoration to a new system of thought, which began in the first century. So the primary concern in the audience in the first century is the nation of Israel and their relationship to God through the Torah or the law. And so the idea of resurrection, if we read Daniel and if we read Ezekiel, the idea is, even though, again, like I said, in terms of the sun and the moon and the stars having physical reference, they're having physical reference doesn't dictate that's the meaning of the text. And so when we look at resurrection, even though we see language that looks to us as if it's talking about bodies coming back from the dead, that's simply a metaphorical representation of a corporate national body being made new and transformed and transfigured in a historical event.
Okay. And
So go ahead.
I was going to say, Jaron, try it again really quick. I just changed the settings. See if he can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Hello, hey, how's it
No.
going?
Huh. God, that's so weird. Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. That's really weird. I thought I don't know what's going on with this. It was working at one point. But okay, well, that's very interesting. I don't know if Jaron has any response to that, but this could be a little bit difficult.
That's a long conversation. I mean,
Sure.
I guess then I'm even further confused what he's saying if he's talking about Jesus said that marvel not, for this hour is coming in which all that are in graves shall hear his voice. So I'm wondering is he saying that also is...
Are you still there, Bob?
Yeah, yeah, you can't hear him.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry
too hard
about
to
that,
talk.
Travis. So yeah, it's too hard to talk this way, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the information. This is going to be difficult figuring out how to do this, but all right. So I guess is there any other comment that you had? Because Jaron can hear you, but I don't know why you can't hear him. That's really odd.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The only thing I'll say, because I don't think we can have a conversation this way, is that I was just a guest on Non Sequitur, and we talked a little bit about this in terms of the doctrine of hell, but I bring up a lot of the same principles. So if you're interested in that, just look out for that coming up on Non Sequitur. I'm not sure when they're going to publish that episode.
Okay, fair enough. That sounds good. Well, thank you much for calling us, Travis, and we'll try and get our audio problem straightened out.
All right. Thanks, Bob. You guys take care.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Hey, Bob, what do you have as your mic settings on the Google? Is that, well, if you're using Google Voice, how does that use a certain settings, or does it use just your computer's mic? And
yeah, it just uses the Google Sounds, and I thought we had this all set up, which is weird. But obviously, since the new computer came in, not so much.
Because you know how on Google Hangouts, how you can change the settings inside that? It's not like that for Google Voice.
I'm looking at Google Voice right now. Let's see.
I don't know if it has separate settings.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Bear with us for just a minute, and we'll try and get this right. But
or else Bob can just translate everything.
Yeah.
Just be our go-between.
Yeah, and John, you're not having any problem hearing him, right? Oh, John.
No, I can hear him fine. I should have seen if he could hear me, but if he can't hear Jaron, he probably can't hear me either.
Yeah, probably not. Let me look at the audio settings just to make sure.
So while Bob's doing that, something that I had mentioned pre-show, and this is maybe changing subjects a little bit, but we had talked about Polaris a little bit, and a while back, Jaron put out a challenge to see if anyone could put like a laser on a globe focused at a point above the globe and then spin it 180 degrees and have the laser still focused at the same point. And of course, this would be sort of for the argument of Polaris and how it remains in the same spot overnight and over the course of a year. Okay, a couple things. So Wolfie did a response to that challenge and basically did it successfully. But my position on this is that in him doing so, it sort of kind of shows that in a globe Earth model, Polaris must be very, very close and not 2.5 quadrillion miles away, right? Because if you think about it to scale, the roof or his ceiling certainly wasn't quadrillions of miles away to scale. And so where does that put Polaris?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree. He did complete the challenge that I had put forth, but I still have so many issues with that. I mean, just the concept of the fact that right here I'm facing in my window, out my window here, I'm facing north. And to look right up and see Polaris, well, it would be there at night. It's not there right now because the sun's out. But then to picture that I'm supposedly spinning throughout a day, I'm going in a complete 360-degree circle, but that star stays right there. Doesn't move, and I'm facing it. So how am I spinning in relation to that star and going all the way around and coming back, but the star stayed right there? So yeah, again, if you get this ball, when you tilt the ball and you put the star way over there and you spin the ball, I guess in some way they've made it seem like, well, you're facing that same direction as you spin around. Yeah, to me, I still don't believe in that or think that. And but I see what you're saying, that so when he's showing the laser light locked on to, and it's not even locked on in the one he's showing, it's kind of close. It's certainly more close than mine was. But so you're saying that since we have to put it so far, the keeping that laser light on that one point, which would be exponentially harder because it's way the, however many, what is Polaris, 40 light years away or 400 light years away? I forgot how much
I think it's
450 light
supposedly
years.
2.5 quadrillion miles.
Yep, or 450 light years. And I think
Yeah,
I found
ridiculous.
the problem. I think I found the problem with the microphone feed.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So I think
And
you're
then
right, though.
so just on top of that, then you also have to move that globe however many miles around the sun, and still have Polaris be in that same point on the ceiling. It just doesn't work even with his challenge success, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's try another phone call. I'm going to open the phone lines now. They are open. Let's give it a shot and see how this works. And there's one. Okay.
Miles around the sun.
You are on with GLOBEBUSTERS.
Yeah, I'm waiting to be on the live chat or on the live stream.
Yes, you are on the live stream.
Yeah. All right, so let's try another.
Okay. You need to shut off your audio in the background.
Okay, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. The question is,
all right.
Can you hear John and Jaron? John and Jaron want to say something?
Can you hear me? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I just want to say that I appreciate you guys, everything that you guys do. I want to take this opportunity to tell the chat to repent and to turn to Jesus. Yeah, have a nice day.
All right, sounds good. Well, I guess
I don't know if he could hear us.
He didn't hear you. That's really weird. All right, well, I've got a couple other settings to try. I'm in the Skype, and I was on microphone. I went to panel in. Let's try virtual audio cable. Try that.
For your
one.
Skype out or your Skype in?
My microphone setting on Skype. Oh, you know what? Maybe that's right. Virtual audio cable out speakers.
Oh, hello.
Oh, you
we
lost
lose Bob.
Me, didn't you?
Bob's gone. Hello, everyone.
All right, do you hear me now?
Hosting the show today.
Do you hear me?
Bobby, whatever you shut off didn't work.
Okay, did you hear me now?
We hear you now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so maybe I'm just doing this the wrong way. All right, let's go. Oh, God, this is crazy. All right. I feel like Jaron.
Hey, I resemble that comment.
Okay, so
well,
now,
when I do live streams and take calls, I go very low tech. I just put my speakerphone on my home phone.
Okay, yeah, all
That's
right.
the best way to do it.
All right, let's try it again. Lines are open. Somebody call us. We'll try this again. We will get this right, and then I'll make a note of where it's supposed to be. This is where I need my chief engineer son.
That's what I
here.
have. I have my note up on the wall of how to run a live stream. Where all the settings should be.
Okay, so 303-225-1019, guys. Give us a call. Let's see if this works. Hopefully I haven't got it too botched up.
Well, we can hear each other, so that's working well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the speaker. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, you are on with GLOBEBUSTERS. Can you hear us now?
Can you hear us now?
Hello, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello.
Well done, Bob.
Way to go, Bob.
All right, let's try this. No. That is not what I wanted to do.
Now you're breaking out a little bit. I thought I'd call back just to see what happened.
Okay. Did you call in on?
Yeah, I got you, Bob. I can hear you.
Did you call the number?
I
did
called
you...
in on I did, but it said the Google connection isn't taking calls, so it threw me off right away. So then I called Skype because I didn't know if that's what you wanted to do.
I'm like, how did that happen? So, all right, can you, Jaron?
Yeah, it said the Google customer is not receiving calls right now.
Okay, hang on a second. Jaron and John, are you still on? Okay, well, apparently I got to hang up with you because it hung up on them. So let me hang up. We'll try this again. Sorry, guys.
Okay, all right, Bob. Sorry,
all right, bye. All right,
yeah,
guys.
It seems like we're still on the call.
Yeah, yeah. He called in on Skype, and I hit it, and it totally screwed me up.
Who called Skype?
We're just not having very good luck here. All right, let's try this. That's what totally screwed me up. All right. So I'm going to try this again. And all right, so let's go ahead and try it one more time, guys. If this doesn't work, we'll just give it up because I don't want to spend the whole day trying to troubleshoot this. 303-225-1019.
That's the Google Voice number?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, you're on with GLOBEBUSTERS. Who we got?
Hey, Bob. This is Chris.
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Hey. Chris, can you hear me?
Not bad, not bad. So I just have a quick question about the AE map and the sun that I wanted to ask you guys.
Okay. Before you do, can you hear John and Jaron at all?
Hello. What's going on?
No, I can only hear you.
All right. Then let me try one other setting here. All right. Can you hear them there? John, say something? Or Jaron?
No.
Ooh, I lost him there.
Yeah, I can't hear them.
Okay, how about now, Jaron? Say something.
Hello, can you hear us?
How about now?
Can you hear me now?
Nope, they're not hearing you.
Can you hear
I'm
me now?
sorry. Okay, well, go ahead and ask me the question. God, this is crazy. We'll have
Sure,
to
no
get this
problem.
right. All right.
Yeah. So basically, I've been thinking about the AE map and how the sun moves around the AE map. And basically, if you think about international flights and how long it takes for a plane to go from, say, North America to Africa, it takes roughly around 30 hours for the entire trip. So I was just wondering how fast the sun is moving for it to be able to move, through all the continents on a daily basis. That's just something I was thinking about, and I just was wondering if you knew anything about that.
Well, the sun would pretty much have to be traveling the same rate as what they're telling us that the Earth is rotating at. It would be 1,040 miles an hour, plus or minus, depending on your latitude.
Okay.
Right, and more during the summer.
However, when you look at airplanes in the sky, they move relatively fast, but the sun's moving really slow. So I was just wondering how it goes through like all of the continents in a 24-hour period if it's moving that slow.
Well, I would answer that, Bob, because the sun is
hello
is personal. It's hold on one second. Oh, tell him to hold on.
Yeah, hold on a second. Jaron is relaying me a message, so just hold on a second.
So to me,
Sure,
the
no
sun is
problem.
a personal apparition, if you will, and because we can only see to the horizon 3 miles in each way, but the sun sets and rises in that 3 mile circle, around you, depending on where you travel. So we know that the sun sweeps across the entire Earth in 24 hours, but your vision of it is not that sweeping, because like you said, a plane flying across the sky will do horizon to horizon in 10 minutes, and it's going 500 miles per hour. So when we say the sun is moving at 1,500 miles per hour or 1,000 miles per hour, then it should be moving twice the speed of a plane, if that's the way you're looking at it. But we're not seeing the sun itself travel around the Earth. That's how I would answer it.
Okay. Yeah, that's difficult to translate all that.
You do your own version.
Yeah, it's
verbatim.
This is really torquing me off that this isn't working. Let's see. I really want to get this thing working. Are you still with us, caller? Yes?
I'm still here.
Okay. All right. Well, Jaron is basically saying that, the sun is kind of your own personal version. It's kind of unique for every observer. And And geez, Jaron, I kind of lost it after that. So this
yeah.
You'll have to listen to it on the playback.
Yeah, there you go.
No problem. I think I know what you mean by that. Does it mean that we see the sun from a different vantage point? Like each person sees it from a different perspective. However, that wouldn't explain how it's able to travel through all the continents if it's moving at that speed. So I was just wondering whether, I've heard this concept that there are two suns. I don't subscribe by that. I don't believe in it, but I just thought that could be something that we can look into as well.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I will have Jaron answer that. We'll hang up with you. We'll have him answer it offline, and I will try and get my Hangout
And you can
problem
watch
fixed.
back.
So we'll go ahead. Why don't I hang up with you, and we'll let Jaron answer that offline, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you, and sorry for all the problem.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh, no problem. Thanks a lot, Bob.
You're
Bye.
welcome.
I'll try and show something here, Bob. I'll show my screen in 1 second, and then you can work on that.
Okay.
Man,
okay,
that's so let me.
frustrating.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that so us talking should be the output from Skype, right? So whatever you have as the output, if they have it as speakers, then that needs to be your input to Google Voice. And if you have our output as headphone, I don't know your setup of your computer, so I guess it kind of is worthless for me to explain it.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen, and you can work on that if you want. Share screen and share screen. All right, and tell me if you see my little drawing here.
Okay, we see your drawing, and you are sharing.
Okay, so, and this is just, again, it's always my opinion, not saying it's any confirmed fact or anything, but I picture this circle being our view circle. We can see in a circle. And so the sun travels at a speed across the sky this way, or whatever way. And so it's above our view circle because our view circle is based on the atmosphere, the most amount of atmosphere being in your direction left and right, and the least amount of atmosphere being when you're looking straight up, which is kind of confusing because if you're talking about from the sun's point of view, well, then the least amount of atmosphere is up here, and as it goes down, it gets thicker and thicker. But from your perspective, the thickest amount of atmosphere is looking around you at your eye level, and then as you look up, the atmosphere reduces so that you get a dome of atmosphere around you. The most at the bottom, the least at the top. So knowing that, if the sun is traveling, let me draw this here. If the sun is traveling this way at a certain speed, and it's going across your sky this way, your view of that sun is separate from the traveling of the sun. So now I'm going to shrink this circle down, and we're going to say we're a little guy down here. And the sun, so he's saying, well, just because we see it at a different perspective, it still doesn't explain how the sun travels at such a great speed, but it does. Because if this sun is traveling, oops, I thought I had a circle on. Circle. If the sun is traveling across the sky from here, going this way, well, your view of it would be completely different, meaning this sun here, this sun here is going to be shining, and when it rises, so it'll be super far away this way, but it's going to rise to you like this. Let me put it behind there.
Right.
Okay. So it rises to you here at your horizon. And then what you see, and this needs to be even much smaller, then you see the rise, and then you're going to see this throughout a 12-hour period of time. You're going to see the sun rise to your zenith, and then it's going to set in 12 hours, or it could be 16, or it could be 9, whatever time of year it is. But during that time, the sun is actually traveling across the sky this way. And you're just getting your view of it based on where it is. So maybe here you're going to see it there. So it is traveling at a much greater speed than a plane, but you're seeing it manifest through the atmosphere. And so in a huge, it's probably traveling, 12,000 miles in the amount of time it takes the sun to just do this in your personal view. So now an airplane that's flying is flying down below, is flying through the atmosphere this way. So you're not really getting any kind of a different view of it versus what it's actually doing, other than we know that the plane is going to come up from the horizon here and go up and then set at your horizon here. But it's really traveling basically just that distance. It's going to be a little bit more because it's higher up. So it's not on the ground. If it was on the ground, then we would see a car traveling 3 miles in each direction, right? So if there's a car here, sorry, I need to get a different color here. If there's a car on the ground, then that car would be traveling this is a 6-mile radius, basically, your circle that you're in, your view circle. And so this car would be traveling this way, going this way, and it would take 6 miles for it to disappear from here to here. But a plane would be up higher, and therefore that's more distance that you're able to see it, meaning the plane is actually over here, but in your view circle, you're seeing it set here. It's kind of hard to explain, but at the same time, really once you understand it, the way the atmosphere displays things for you, and that each person really has their own. And I know, Jean, you kind of, we've had a show together where we talked about it being like a glass cup on a basketball court over each person's head. And that's how each person, basically sees the world around them.
Right. Yeah. So like if you had a bunch of glasses with upturned glasses filled with water on a basketball court, every square foot, and you could observe from within those, and then you ran a spotlight or an omnidirectional light over the entirety of the basketball court, each little observer is going to see it rise and set in their little subjective bubble. But the sun or the light has traveled much, much further than those couple of inches or the 6 miles in the case of reality. But it appears that it's only gone 6 miles. So yeah, I totally agree, and your explanation is probably better. But yeah, that's totally well done. Yeah.
You said it right. I mean, it's kind of like this is what John's describing, is that we're not in a dome, each of us, but that's the way the atmosphere works. And to explain that again, because I've had people say, I don't understand the dome atmosphere. And you just have to look at the fact, imagine this blue dome not being there. And then you say, okay, this is a person, he's standing, and we know we can see in a circle. So far that's proven. How could you see in different than a circle? In any way you turn, your sight is the radius of a circle. So that's proven. And then you have to say, okay, where's the most amount of atmosphere? Well, obviously, if you're looking eye level around you, that is the most amount of atmosphere that there can possibly be. Because if you start to look up into the, say, at 45 degrees, well, the atmosphere is thinning out at the top here. So if the atmosphere is starting to thin out, well, then the most amount of atmosphere is down here, meaning your eye level atmosphere. Let me change this, a little bit bigger of a pen. And so your eye level atmosphere is your most here. And then as you start going up, it reduces. And so it kind of does the same thing that this dome does. And then as you look up, this is the least amount of atmosphere, because yes, here it's heavy, but then lighter, 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 lighter. So this is a dome that would have to be true if the atmosphere does as we know it does, which is basically go from lightest at the top to heaviest at the bottom. So if that's the way the atmosphere works, you could think of layers where this is the least, and then it increases, more and more as it goes down. Okay. So then the highest amount would be here where these 3 pluses are. So then basically looking left or right would be your most amount of atmosphere. As you go up, it's going to reduce. So you have these domes, or not domes, I don't want to call them that, bubbles or whatever. That's how we view the world. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's really interesting that we can look around and basically the things rendered to us based on their height from the Earth, based on their distance from the Earth, and based on their speed. So the sun is obviously much further than an airplane, because the sun travels a great distance, but to us is rendered in our little atmosphere. Whereas I can't see a plane over Colorado, right? Because the plane is extremely low. The plane is maybe here or here. And as the plane travels away from me and goes to Colorado, I no longer can prospectively see it. I will see it set to my horizon after, say, maybe 250 or 400 miles, somewhere around there. That plane will set to me. And then things that are higher, like the sun, will still render until they set for me. So that's the way I see it. I don't know. Hopefully that explains it to him a little bit better.
Yeah, and the atmosphere is going to cause any inbound light to you to refract. And so it really does explain, it aids in perspective. Perspective's part of it, but the refraction really does perfectly explain, sunrise and sunset, and even will, exacerbate plane rises and plane sets, if you will. And, that's really all the explanation that we need, is that our subjective bubble of atmosphere is curved and causes light to curve or refract, not the other way around. Light, it's assumed by globers that light always travels in straight lines and that the Earth is curved. but that's the opposite of the truth. In fact, light travels in curved lines and the Earth is flat. And either way works theoretically, but only one can be the truth. And we know which one that is.
Yeah, I'll show that ray optics thing one more time. And I encourage people to go, if I can find it here, to go and check it out, because you can really, this one here, ray optics simulation, which is at rick2tu288.github. But if you start playing with this and you get yourself a dome or some sort of a circular arc here. So let me see if I can do this real quickly. So we're just going to do it like this, and then we're going to spread that out a little like this. And then you need to get your blocker, which would be the ground for your horizon line. Oops, hello. Okay, so now we got your horizon. This is basically the same thing I just drew. And then you've got your point source of light, and you've got your extended rays, which are the ones that come in. This is the sun. So the sun is not the yellow dot. The sun that you see is the orange culmination of the light. And so as the sun travels across the sky like this, you get a rise in the set of the orange sun. This is the sun that you see in your world. So this sun can be going extremely fast, and it's going to do this rise and set thing for you. If I could take this further, you would see it set. I just can't go further than this. I could shrink my little bubble. But does that make sense? Oops.
Yeah.
Are you still okay?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to bring.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I wish. Actually, Dr. Zach and his group have done some really excellent work on this using Cinema 4D, and I just wish that more Globers would look into this, because it really does make perfect sense. So many people say, well, you can't have sunrise and sunset on flat Earth, but that's just ridiculous, because this sort of thing explains it perfectly well. Yeah.
And when you look at this light that we get, this kind of this little bow light, but I mean, that's really what the sunrise and sunset is. This is why when the sun's coming to you in the morning, the sky lights up in this fashion. It looks like, you might even describe it as a sphere, right? It looks like this light's coming up over into the sky, but that's how the ray optics would work. And then so you're down here, you actually see this is the sun. Whoops, didn't mean to put another sun in there. There we go. And then as it goes away from you again, you get that lasting, okay, stop doing that. You get that lasting light. After the sun sets, you see the evening. You see, or the, whatever you call it, the dawn, or the
dusk.
Dusk, thank you. Or, so it just is, that's how I describe it.
Just out of curiosity, Jaron, when I was talking about this, your power had failed, but I was talking about the sunrise and showing a video where the sun would come up and it would be a very localized sunrise. In other words, there would be sunrise and the sky would be, becoming fluorescent and lighting up. But then if you look immediately to the left or to the right of that, it would be dark. And you've seen that footage, right? And from airlines or from all kinds of stuff. Now, when I visualize that, and like I said, I could be wrong on this, but when I visualize that and I try and look at it from the heliocentric model and put that sun 93 million miles away, I cannot reconcile how you would get a localized sunrise. It seems to me that sunrise effect should be all the way across the horizon, right, in the Ball Earth model.
I totally agree. Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense with the sun 93 million miles away. None of what we see.
Like if you look at NASA's animations of the Ball Earth, you clearly see the Terminator line all the way, across an entire longitude line, and that's necessarily what you would see on a globe. But the sun is not infinitely or practically infinitely distant on a ball with us on a ball. The sun is relatively local with us on a flat Earth, and the atmosphere causes all of these optical illusions, for lack of a better term. And I can understand completely why ancients and Christopher Columbus and all these guys thought the Earth was a ball. But frankly, we have plenty of data at this point in history to know that it's not true.
And the other thing is too here, when you think about it, and I've made jokes about it before because this is how we know it's not the case. But this here is the sun, so you could have clouds here, and you are standing here, And so people say there's clouds behind the sun. Well, there's no clouds behind this sun, the yellow sun. That's impossible. And we know that because as you get higher, if you were to take a hot air balloon and start rising up, well, your view of this sun would change because your angle changes with the atmosphere. So as you go up higher, this angle to the sun would rise with you. That's what the sun does. So there's no clouds behind the sun. If you're talking about there's clouds behind the light that you see as the sun, that's probably true. There are sometimes clouds further than the sun is representing itself to you. So there's lots of phenomenon that happen that wouldn't happen, at least on a globe, that we see all the time. All the colors of the sunset, you look at a sunset, how beautiful that looks. And when you get those purples and those oranges, well, that is localized to your dome. I mean, if the sun is setting for you, let's say here, and you're in this dome and you're getting some purples and some yellows and some, keep doing that, and some cool colors in here. Well, a person that's over here in their dome certainly isn't seeing those colors to their left or to their right. It's not even in their view because the color is representing for you. So a lot of people see, there's lights underneath the clouds. Well, again, this cloud here would be lit from underneath. So yes, you would be seeing light from underneath the cloud. However, the sun has never gone below your feet. The sun is up here. And I don't think that you'll get light rays. I think that the light rays emanate from the sun through that dot. I don't think that you're getting light rays that shine up because we never see rays of sun coming up unless you see them on the roof or the ceiling. Basically, you can see I'm sure you've seen the anti-crepuscular rays, which are basically these rays on the sky. They look like they're angled down to the horizon to you. So there's so much to learn in this whole study of what the sun does and what we see. But just to have somebody dismiss it with, well, we see lights under clouds, because we don't always. You can watch most sunsets, the clouds are not lit from underneath. And the colors that you see are your own. Somebody 10 miles away may see completely different colors or may see no colors at all.
Yeah. And I think
it's really interesting how subjective it is, but the light is just a really interesting thing because you can't see it unless it's reflecting off of something, and you're seeing the light that's reflected off of something, but somebody that's at a different vantage point is not going to see that same reflection. They're going to see something completely different. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and they make that argument also, interestingly enough, about the stars in space, right? They say that you can't see the starlight because they're not reflecting off anything. And of course, I take exception with that because if the stars were truly points of light, thousands of light years away or whatever, I would say, yeah, okay, I can see why it wouldn't light up all the space around it because it has nothing to refract, reflect, or anything like that off of. However, it seems to me, just like if you were looking at a laser from the side, and there's no particulates there, it's fairly clean, you can't see the beam going across your eyes, but if you look at what the laser is hitting, you can see it. Or if you look right down the barrel of that laser, you can also see it. So, some NASA apologist was trying to say, well, that's why, they're not able to see the stars in space. But the problem with that is you should be able to look directly at the stars and see them, looking right down the barrel, if you will, right? And this is
right.
why.
And what about the fact that some astronauts say they can see lots of stars, extra stars, and then others astronauts say that they can't see any stars? I mean, which one is it?
Well, that's why bad scripting. Stuck. That's just bad
exactly.
scripting.
You forgot to tell them one of the important things because both of them answered what they think the answer should be, and now you're at a conundrum of no matter which way you go now, you'll get pointed out that, well, people you say are in space and have been there have said that they've witnessed something that they clearly now have not. So either way you look at it, if NASA ever answers that question, half of the astronauts are liars.
Exactly.
Well, all of them.
All of them are liars. Yeah, but it definitely.
I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Even in the benefit of the doubt, half of them are.
Right. Yeah.
So,
indeed.
So that just adds more credibility to the idea of the stars being close and local, and really that it requires the atmosphere, and most likely, once again, those very same gases in the upper atmosphere to be fluoresced by those pinpoints of light, right? To actually see the stars. And I think once you get up even to a point that's so high, as we've seen in other demonstrations, the starlight does seem to fade. Now, I've never seen it cut completely out. But then again, we only have like 1 or 2 night launches, balloon launches to actually reference from, because our balloon obviously was lost. But that was something that we were trying to test. But we did find video later on by a guy that used the Sony A7 cam or something like that, something that was extremely light sensitive, had very good sensors in it. And even though at, I think the balloon popped at around 89,000 feet, so that's all the higher it went, you could still see the starlight, but it had definitely faded to a fairly good amount from where it was at like 30 or 40,000 feet, stuff like that. So again, I think that what we're seeing, the starlight, whatever it is, these energetic pinpoints of light that affect us so profoundly, thus astrology, are also being brought into the visual spectrum by the noble gases that they are also illuminating, just like the sun.
And I think that the stars work the same way as the sun does, that they're not bending down. You're just looking at a further distance item, and it's rendering for you if you're at the equator, well, Polaris renders for you at 0 degrees. And as you move to 45 degrees, Polaris is at 45 degrees. And as you move to 90 degrees or at the North Pole, Polaris is above your head. So it's just, and actually the sun works the same way, right? I mean, that's basically, if you're talking about the equinox, it wouldn't happen on other times of the year because the sun is either towards Capricorn or towards Cancer. But on the equinox, the same is true for Polaris that is true for the sun, meaning if you're at the North Pole, the sun would exist at your horizon the entire day. And as you move to 45 degrees, the sun is 45 degrees. And as you move to 90 or 0, it would be above your head. Did I explain that right? I might not have.
Yeah, no.
I get it.
I got it. Yeah, you definitely did. Let's see. So what do you guys think? Gosh, which one is this?
So I guess I'm just thinking out loud now. So the way that they describe the reason that those two things are equatable is because they're both so far away. Whereas, right? I mean, that's why the sun basically does the same thing as the stars. Is they're both so far away that's why they both act the same? I guess I'm trying to
because they're so far away, or
well, I'm guessing. I mean, how else can they explain why the sun does the same thing as far as its angle with where you are on Earth? It compares to your latitude. If you're at 37 degrees, then and the sun is not at the 37; it's at 90 minus 37 for you, right? I'm going the wrong direction.
Right.
But if I'm at 37 degrees, then on the equinox, the sun is going to be 90 minus 37 degrees. That's the angle to the sun. So if it's the same as Polaris for me, which is turn around, and the Polaris is at that angle. So the only way two things can be the same angle from you on Earth is if they're both equal distances. So I'm guessing that's how they describe it. They must say the sun is so far away and the stars are so far, and they both do the same. Now I got to work on that. Thanks. Now I've ruined the rest of my day. Thanks a lot.
Well, and honestly, to me, it seems like good evidence that the sun and the stars are approximately the same distance, more or less, whatever they are.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
But they're probably going to say, and I would think that Globers would argue more something like this, that you're not seeing the actual sun or actually Polaris, you're seeing sort of a rendering of it or a projection of that light hitting your subjective atmosphere. But see, they really can't do that. Because when they do that, then if you trace that back to the starting point, then it just goes against the globe Earth. But I would sort of expect them to make those sort of arguments, but they don't. They still get refraction backwards half the time, or just ignore it altogether.
Well, it makes no sense, the whole idea of light traveling anyway. If you're spinning on an Earth with the light traveling at you, then we should see just wavy ass lines all through the sky, because you're not seeing. You have to see the light where it is now and where it was a second ago and where it was before that. So as we're spinning, we should see light lines going to the stars. Does that make any sense? That's what I think you would see. You wouldn't see a pinpoint of light because it's had to travel to you. And so as you're spinning, you should see the light as it was 10 minutes ago and before that and before that.
Well, right, and also the stars should change relative positions just based on the refraction amount, depending on where they are in their elevation angle to you.
Absolutely.
But they don't.
They don't.
Yeah, they absolutely should though. On a globe Earth.
Yep.
Yep.
Very interesting. So I don't know if you guys have seen this particular video by No Fanfare, but I find it interesting. I'm not sure if he's right on about this or not. In fact, well, I don't know. It's highly subjective at this point. It's kind of like, people looking at the moon and saying that that's a map of the flat Earth. But, we've talked about the reflectivity of possibly a dome being up there and how it causes things to invert in their rotations, right? Well, if that was true, you would tend to think that you would see some sort of mirror effect of the North Stars down in the southern hemisphere. And I kind of think, I find that intriguing because what this guy has done is he's showing these rotations, the counter-rotating stars, and there are some constellations that do seem to be similar, although their orientations are a little bit different. And this would be, I guess, if we see more and more of these alignments or more of these incidences where we're seeing very similar star constellations with slight angle changes, that could, tend to make a case for the dome being the cause of the opposite rotating stars, kind of like what you've posited before, Jaron. And that's one possible explanation. Of course, I've looked at it from a couple different explanations, not the least of which would be the counter-rotating Birkeland currents rotating those fields around above us. And, I was just wondering what you guys thought about this, if you had seen it at all and taken a look at this.
So I thought about this probably a year ago and played with it for 2 or 3 nights and couldn't get anything definitive and kind of left it and said, no, it's not the case. So when I saw this video, I said, okay, well, I'll watch it, even though I know it's not going to match up. But as I started to watch, I went back to it, and for the last couple of nights, I've been again playing with it because it's one of those things that would be the globe killer. That's the end. I mean,
absolutely.
If that was discovered, it would be the biggest embarrassment of all time to know that the north and southern stars are the same, just mirrored and upside down, because of where you're viewing them from on the flat Earth. So I looked at it again and again. I still cannot get it to match, but there's so many questions that go into it because you have to look at which angle you're looking at, and do you match up the celestial points, or do you match up where your zenith would be? So it's very intricate, and I have to watch his video again to see exactly how he did it. But you can, that one app I always use, or the planetarium app I use, I opened up 2 different versions of it on 2 different browsers and got them to sync up with these 2 locations. And I had one place in the north looking south, one place in the south looking north, and tried to get them to match. I even put a little round like makeup mirror in front of me and tilted it so that I saw the upper version through the mirror and didn't see it. And then I was looking through the mirror trying to match it, and I can't get anything. So if somebody else is getting that, and please maybe give me the hints or the clues I'm missing, because that also hurts my head because it gets confusing. Well, it does, because when you're looking at like a planetarium software, well, that technically has already been flipped. So you don't really need to flip the view there, because if it's looking at the sky, well, it's looking at the flipped sky. But then again, if you think about standing at the South Pole and looking north, well, where the hell's that? Which direction is north? North is everywhere. So it becomes incredibly difficult to line yourself up, and then you move a little bit off of the South Pole, and then you turn and look behind you. Well, that's south. But again, just to the right is technically north, not east or west. So it just gets impossible for me to really come up with a way that you could match these stars and then say, oh, these are just a mirror image of each other. So maybe somebody's come up with a better method. I seem to just get a headache as I try and do it.
I know it's
well, one thing that might explain why you don't have, like, if we're humoring this and say, okay, well, let's say this is what's going on. And I think we might have had somebody on the show that pointed this out. But if you look at a reflection of the stars in a still pool of water or a still lake, some of the stars will reflect almost perfectly, and many of the stars don't reflect at all. So that may explain why you don't have that perfect instances of everything, is that some of the starlight reflects and some of it doesn't. But yeah, I tend to agree with Bob that the counter rotation of the southern stars, and it's not perfect like it is in the north either, but it's probably due to the rotational magnetic field of the Earth, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be several things. I'm intrigued by stuff like this because I like to look at, other people's thoughts of how this might be happening. And I have to admit, there are some interesting correlations, but definitely nothing definitive that I can see. But I also would have to say that you would need to take things like, star magnitude into consideration also. If it is a reflection, there's going to be a marked difference in star magnitude on each side. In other words, the same constellation of stars in the north hemisphere, assuming this is true, would very likely have a far lower brightness or higher magnitude. God, that always confuses me. In the southern hemisphere, because I don't think anything would be reflecting quite that precisely. But again, and then there's also other distortions that could be happening. If the firmament, if the Milky Way is indeed some sort of rupture in the firmament, there could be distortions being caused by that. But still, it's an intriguing thing to look at, and I'm
Absolutely.
always open to stuff like this. You bet.
Now, I'm just thinking in my head that you've mentioned that. Aren't the stars in the south generally much further than the ones in the north? Or am I wrong there?
Yes. No, you are correct on that. Which
is interesting.
I also find interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, just something to think about, and I'm going to watch No Fanfare and see where he goes with this, because I think it's intriguing. Don't know if it's right or not, but again, there are other explanations. But one thing I am certain of, and I've really got to get on Iru about modeling this, is that what we see, with all the time lapses, I am certain is not what we would see if we were actually on a spinning ball in a star field, spinning around in a circle. The stars would not behave the same way. We would not get these perfectly circular stars, because they would, it seems to me, like I said, they would have to necessarily become more oval or more elongated as you
here's
change
something interesting,
latitude
Bob.
positions. Yeah.
Here's something interesting, and I think that this kind of is one of those things that goes against both the globe and the flat Earth. Well, so what you just described is what I would think would be the case on a flat Earth, that we would, to see perfect circles, well, how could that happen if I'm at 45 degrees and somebody else is at 35 and somebody else is at 65? We shouldn't all see circles. They should be ovals. And on a globe, same thing, obviously. But if you go look online and you type in, why are my star trails ovals, you'll find out that you have to send your star trails through processing to get the circles. So the circles are not what is being shown in the sky. The circles are a product of manipulation from programs, Adobe Photoshop or other such star trails. Now, they're not going to tell you that's what they're doing, but they're bringing, because you're only seeing 1/3 of a circle. You're only seeing 8 hours of a circle of a star.
Of a rotation, but I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean? Because it's processed. I mean, you can play it back right off the back of the camera. How is that processed?
Well, it's processed through the camera because you're doing it as star trails. So the camera knows to circle your star trails. If you just I'm going to type in right now, why are my star trails ovals? And usually they'll say something to the effect of, oh, well, you need to do this, or you need to, because what you're taking is actually what you're seeing. Why are my star trails? So, if you were to take.
So wait, are you talking about, like, if you focus a time lapse on Polaris, you don't get concentric circles?
I don't think they would be circles, because it would be based on where you're at. So if I'm at 37 degrees, well, the stars that are on the far side of Polaris should be making smaller circles than the ones that are on the near side to me, right? So I should get an oval, even on a flat Earth. And so I just looked into, because I heard Wolfie say in a video that the fact that we get perfect circle star trails is evidence that we live on a globe. So then I just said, well, yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I think that I've seen oval star trails. I don't know if have you ever seen, there's tons of pictures where they're ovals. Have you seen those?
No, every time lapse I've seen was perfect circles. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't true, but from what I've seen, I've never seen that.
So, Bob, if you just type in star trails, and
go ahead and share your screen, Darren, and do it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's see here, and share. Okay, so can you see my screen now?
Not yet. Now we can.
Okay. Okay, so if you look at these, some of these are not circles. They're ovular. Like this one's definitely a circle, right? But if you look at some of these, like this one, these are not circles. These are clearly ovals. So here, this is clearly an oval. And so people might say, well, why are we getting some ovals and some circles? So if you search, why are my star trails ovals? Then you'll get a lot of people asking questions saying, hey, I'm taking images and my star trails are turning out ovals. And then you'll have people come in and tell them how to correct it, they're not using the right software, or the software's not doing something correctly, or it's never the case of, oh, well, your camera is drifting, or your camera's, no, it's that the ovals would happen on a flat Earth, in my opinion. So I do think that we are taking ovals, and the star trails programs are, because if you look at a star, again, you're only taking a third of a circle, meaning a star is going from here to here, right? A third of this circle. So then the software is saying, oh, it's continuing a perfect circle around that path. But that's not true. The third of the circle that you're seeing would then be like an ellipse. It's just the software
Aren't those
is
just
only
the other stars that are making, and so you're getting what appears to be full circles here because you have different stars at different positions around that
but
circle.
every star, but if you have a star here, right? And then let me bring up this picture here so a little better. Okay, so these stars here, and now picture that the Earth is flat. To me, this would be impossible to get in the sky. How would you see circles if the stars are circling above your head? I don't think you would see circles like this. So interesting though that these buildings are leaning. This is what should happen on a globe. Anyway, so each star is only traveling a third of the circle. So yeah, it might be over here, might be over here, might be over here, but wherever it's traveling, this software is completing the circle. So if you're looking at this star here and you're saying this circle is, no, this circle is not completed by other stars. This one star made this one circle, right? Meaning each of these is one star.
Right. Well,
right.
More or less, yeah.
More or less.
There's overlap.
So what I'm,
yeah.
Right, more or less. But what I'm saying is that if you were to draw a third of this circle and a third of a circle over here, and then you continued the circle for both of them, you would get circles. But that doesn't mean that they would have continued in that circle. They could have gone out here. But if you only took this part of that circle, meaning it could be an ellipse like this, right? But if you only took it for this part of the circle and then you said, well, it continued to circle, then you would always get circles. But it doesn't mean that the whole night would have been a circle. You're just taking a third of its travel. And if you look at any ellipse, take a third of that travel and then just say, oh, I'm going to make this a circle. Don't you see how that could work? But any ellipse.
I can't agree that the processing in the camera is doing that. I just can't get my head around that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Because, well, how would okay, so here's the thing though. A camera would have to know that stars travel in ellipses based on your location. Meaning if I'm at 37 degrees looking at Polaris, the camera would have to know that I'm where I'm at. So it doesn't know that. The camera is simply taking the star during its path. It went from here to here on my camera. So the software says I continued the whole path.
So it's like a motion tween, is what you're saying?
Well, that's what star trails, that's what star trails are, right? So here's an oval looking, okay? So these look like more ovals to me. They're not circles. You can even see this is nothing. So this is like a real image of what the sky would do. Now, if you were to put this in some sort of processing, it would just continue the circle, but make it a circle. Continue the path. It's only 8 hours. I don't know how to describe that any better. When we see a circle like this,
right? So you're only getting an arc of that path,
right?
Not the
and
whole.
so the camera,
path.
all
but
the camera
you get that illusion. You get the illusion that you're getting the whole circle because you've got many different instances of stars.
Right? That and plus, okay, so if star trails were just left alone, you would only see 1/3 about of a circle, right? But the system is actually continuing that line and saying, oh, it went in a circle.
I don't think the system is doing it, Jaron. What it's doing is it's picking up other stars that are in the same relative position from the arc that is just carrying on. I don't think digital processing has anything to do with this effect. I really don't.
What if you did it? what if you did it on an old school camera that has like tape in it? It would still do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Well, supposedly it would make ovals. That's what that's what I'm reading here. If you look at oval-shaped stars, that people are saying, why am I getting ovals when I take star trails? And then usually I'll have to find one, for somebody that says the reason why. But people are usually saying things to the effect of, oh, well, which software are you using? How are you putting them in? How are you stacking images? Because that's basically what star trails are. They're just stacked images, correct?
Yeah, it's like time lapse. Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to describe. If you took an ellipse, okay, so we know what an ellipse looks like, almost like an egg shape. And out of that ellipse, you only took a third of each of the orbits of the ellipse. And then you stacked the ellipse images. Would they not be a circle?
Yes.
You certainly wouldn't get an ellipse. So that's what I'm saying is being done. You're taking a third of an ellipse, stacking them on top of each other, calling them star trails, showing that they're circles. But the third of an ellipse is a circle.
But
because you're not.
So are you saying, I guess this is where I'm having a hard time getting my head around what you're saying, Darren, because it sounds to me like you're saying that the camera is dynamically processing them to actually go in a circle.
Absolutely not. So, okay, so just imagine this. We have an ellipse racetrack of a race car. Okay, we're above this ellipse racetrack. It's a circular racetrack, but it's more like an oval shape. And somebody takes a picture every 2 minutes or whatever. And so you keep, but the picture only lasts as long as 1/3 of that track. Okay, so then you take all those 1/3 of track motions and stack them together, then you would only see circles. You wouldn't see the oval. Am I not making sense? I don't know. I that's what I think. I'll have to look into this more.
I get your point.
It looks like
this, but this is another one of those things where most people are just content to say, "This makes my head hurt to think about this. I'm just going to accept the mainstream line."
Well, see this picture here. This picture here, is this perfect circles? What do you mean? This picture that's on my screen now, this is not a perfect circle. These are completely and totally ovals. So to me, this is what would happen on a flat Earth. You would see ovals. Now, a lot of people are saying, hey, how come my star trails are ovals? And they say, oh, well, if you want circles, how are you processing them? How are you stacking them? What are you doing with your post-production? So it is, in my opinion, wrong for Wolfie to say these perfect circles prove we're on a globe. Yeah, well, they're not perfect circles. They're actually ovals that are being corrected through whatever software you have. And I'm not saying every camera does it, because obviously this camera does star trails, but didn't make them circles. So I guess it's just more of something people need to look into, because if you read, all I typed in here was, why are my star trails ovals? And if you read through, there's tons of people saying, why are my star trails ovals? What is going on that's causing that? And then you'll have people come along and say, here's how to take star trails, and here's how to get tips. And the tips are always something to do with the processing, because people are seeing, look at this. This is an oval.
Okay. Yeah.
This is not a circle.
Yeah.
So I think that we've all been told that these are perfect circles, and they can be if you have the right software and you do the right stacking. They can be perfect circles, but they also can be ovals.
Did they ever mention that barrel distortion could be part of what's causing this? I mean, it seems
no, but that could be true too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I guess why I brought this up in the first place is just to say that they're perfect circles. Well, I don't think that works on a flat Earth. So I don't say that, because if they're perfect circles, how could that be possible with what we talked about? We see things like the sun and things like that tell us that if we are looking at stars off into the distance, that it would be pretty impossible for those to make circles to our vantage point, perfect circles. They would have to make ovals. Some of them are further away and some of them are closer. So that kind of necessitates, you can't have a circle above your head where some things are further away, some things are closer. Just like during the sun, during my winter, the sun can't just make a circle above my head. That's why I see it go low and out, because it's lower. It's further away from me.
Right.
If it just did a perfect circle, then I wouldn't be able to say. So I mean, that's just something. Again, I always try to bring up things I think people can look into. And this Southern Star thing, which is how we got on this conversation, is one of those things where I think it's a mistake if you don't take an hour out of your day and look into it and see if you see something other people don't see, because that's the kind of thing that would break the globe in one night. It'd be done.
Yeah.
If it was ever shown. Yeah.
I was gonna say there's also the issue of obviously perspective, right? It's kind of like the sun. When we look at the sun and we see it rise and go over the top of us and set, we're not necessarily picking up any arc to, or horizontal arc, lateral arc, right? But if you get some shots of it, you can actually pick up a very small degree where you can see the sun is kind of arcing around in a circle, right?
Mhm.
Which is what it would be doing on a flat Earth. But because of the fact that we are limited to such a small portion of the sky, most people just watch the sun rise, go over the top of us, and go down, and assume that it's going in a straight line, when in fact it is not, and it takes a very specific perspective to be able to see that.
Right. And so if you had a bunch of suns, let's just picture, for example, you have a ton of suns doing what the sun does, and some of them close to you and some of them far away. Those wouldn't make circles in the sky. They would make ovals, or at least the tracks would be ovular. Because if I'm at 37 degrees in the United States, the sun is going out in front of my face, is going around me as I'm facing south. But then as it goes behind me, it's going further behind me than it is when it's in front of me. So it's part of its track, to my perspective, would be an oval. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I
Yeah.
know we have some people in the chat that are kind of disagreeing with all of this. Mad scientists for one, but whatever. We're just kicking this around, guys. We're not putting anything in stone.
No, I'm
trying
not
to
saying
wrap
anything
our heads around it,
here.
and we're just taking you along on the journey with us, because this is what we do. When we're not online, doing shows, is we talk to each other about stuff like this, trying to figure it out, honestly. And sometimes, we can appear to ask really stupid questions to each other, but you have to at least get these out here to get them confirmed, or at least addressed. So
It's something that we were always afraid of doing in the past, or at least was something that was frowned upon, was asking questions, even though that's part of science and that's how you learn and that's how you get closer to the truth, is by asking questions, and by everyone just saying, oh, that's a dumb question, or that's stupid to say that, or we know for thousands of years that this works this way. I don't know how many times I've been slapped across the face for thinking that way, and thinking, oh no, I know that it's this way. I know that we believe this for a reason. It's worth looking into everything again, at least to me.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, cool. Well, it's boy, what a show we've had this week. Lots of problems. Hopefully, when we come back, I will have the phone call problem ironed out, and we'll try and figure out why OBS decided to start before I even turned the stream on. That really weirds me out.
That makes no sense.
It was Belu in the machine.
Damn Belu.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if OBS wasn't like caching all of it, beforehand, and then just started the live broadcast. I don't know.
Do you record the show as well?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, neither do I.
Yeah, I just let it stream. So whatever. All right. Well, that's cool. Well, I guess we could probably close it out now. This week, guys, I'm going to let me flip back over to my left screen share, and I'm gonna reshare the screens over there. All right, you guys should be able to see that. All right, so last week we had a little minor technical difficulty, and this was another weird thing that I don't know why, but I think it had something to do with the player that I was using. But my apologies go out to Keith Atwood and Yalapa Oliver and Gabriella Caniglio. I was trying to play their song last week, and for whatever reason, when I was typing, it was completely screwing with the controls on the media player, and it was causing it to jump all over the place, which was really strange. So I'm going to close out the show same way this time, and and I will have the link to here. I will put the link to this song from Bandcamp in the show notes. And no, this is not the same song that Mark Sargent mirrored. That was actually called Spinning Blue Ball 1, or the original Spinning Blue Ball. This is the second part of it. And I will go ahead and close the show out with this, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that's what happened. It was weird. So stuff happens. So anyway, before we do that, guys, you have anything else that you want to address before we call it a show? I guess, John, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I've got a couple things I'm in the middle of working on. I'm going to try to get them uploaded in the next few days or before the end of the month. So, yeah, just keep a lookout on the Morgile channel for some new stuff.
All right, there you go. Okay, fair enough. And Jaron, anything new with you?
Nothing new. Always thinking, always playing with things. So thank everybody for watching. Always appreciate that. And stay tuned for more information on the spacewalking tape. And also, I've got a few videos that are getting ready to come out. So keep an eye on the channel.
All right,
beautiful.
All right. All right, guys, so we'll call it a show. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. Even Bob screws it up once in a while. Jaron, you must feel vindicated to some degree.
Oh, man, I'm sitting up so much straighter today.
It can happen to the best of us. So, beautiful. All right, guys, we will catch you next week, and we'll let you know how the conversation goes with Brian, and hopefully be able to elaborate a little bit more on his model. I had all the links posted in the old show, the one that got screwed up before this one. I will move them over as soon as we close out this show, so you guys can have all the links to everything. But other than that, that wraps up. And again, like I said, I do want to point out one more time that we do have the Flat Earth UK conference in 5 days, and that we can get those video streams for $27 US, 20 pounds, or 20 euros. At the Flat Earth UK. Well, actually, this White Shop Productions, I will put that in the show notes. But otherwise, the website to go to is www.flatearthconventionuk.co.uk, and hopefully we'll see everybody there. I know I will certainly be watching it. So until then, everybody, thanks for joining us. Thanks, mods. Thanks, everybody, for all that you do for us. We do appreciate it. So be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind. There's truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.
Well, they tell me I come from a pond full of scum right here on a spinning blue ball. A spot from the sky made the scum come alive. Somehow it managed to thrive. Then the scum grew fins and learned how to swim. They swam upon the shore. From one to the next, species progressed. From that day on evermore. Not far in the past, from some monkey's ashes, how we find us here. The theory stinks, found no missing links. It's clear that none will appear. We're on a spinning blue ball. That's a lie they've been telling us all. Don't believe the things they say. Use your mind, find your own way. All the powers that be will show you what they want you to see. Alright. It was true, I learned it in school. They taught me to parrot their rules. I opened my eyes and came to surmise that what they taught was untrue. It's not just school, everywhere it's the rule. One grand Luciferian lie. Be on your guard, don't be too smart. You might just get surprised. Johnny Depp is a girl, Angelina's a guy, and it makes me roll my eyes. I really don't care which gender they wear, but I never could stomach a lie. We're on a spinning blue ball. That's the lie they've been telling us all. You've been tricked, you've been spoon-fed. Tricks they put inside your head. The things that you know, they're all just a part of the show.
Lift up your eyes, take a look at the sky. Truth is right there to see. Airplanes, white lines, spraying poisons behind into the lungs of you and of me.
wish I could look in one single book to learn all I need to be free. But when the name is Bible, then you know of what it's full. So I guess it's all up to me. They serve me up shit and expect me to sit and take it with a wink and a grin. But of all the lies, blue ball takes the prize. For deception, I give them the win. We're on a spinning blue ball. That's a lie they've been telling us all. All that we see, a false reality. It's time for our minds to be set free.
Most of the sheep are very deeply asleep, and they won't hear a word of this song. But those who can see will most surely agree it's time to separate right from wrong.
The photos from space are a total disgrace, and all cartoons are fakes. So why don't the Hubble take a little trouble to show us tranquility base? They got a lot of nerve, tell me water can curve and stick to the spinning blue ball. We know water's lies flat, cause that's where it's at, and the earth lies flat and still. Yeah, I come to suspect the Mandela effect can show us the way to get clear. If nothing is real, this ain't a done deal, so let go of your fear. We're on a spinning blue ball. That's a lie they've been telling us all. White is black, black is white. What is wrong and what is right? Now is the time to open up your mind.